Good evening and welcome to the Georgetown School Committee meeting of Thursday, October 9th, 2014. If we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, the chair would like to open the meeting with the approval of regular session minutes of September 25th, 2014, public relations minutes of September 24th, 2014, and acceptance of warrants number 15V15.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to introduce our student rep, Vanessa Yavorski. Thank you for coming.
No problem.
We appreciate it. Can you just tell us a little bit about what's been going on in the schools?
Yeah, right now we just finished our freshman elections for student government and the student council, and as well as our sports teams are doing really well on their seasons. Our field hockey team has on October 16th, we have a pasta dinner for anyone that's going to help fundraise for our town, for our team. And we also have Unity Day on October 22nd, and that's where the school comes together and we all dress in orange to promote the anti-bullying month.
So orange is the color.
Who's organizing Unity Day?
Peer
Vanessa?
leaders.
Oh, the peer leaders,
Yeah.
great.
Okay, and the football, how is, football going? I'm
And
always interested in football. I like football.
we had one of the first wins, I think, this past week, so that was awesome for the team.
Yeah, I
They're all
heard it was a
really
great game.
Yeah.
Right, that was,
We have more kids this year, right, Chris, football?
45,
Yeah, and that, last year we had significantly, yeah.
yeah.
So that's good, and when we
made a
have the new
difference.
turf field,
Yeah.
it's gonna be wonderful.
And it's a new coach too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Justin,
Yeah,
he's the
that's-
baseball coach.
Right,
As well,
yeah, that's good.
yeah, he's
Okay.
it's very motivating to the kids.
Good. So it's a month into school, everything's going well?
All the seniors are getting ready to apply to all their colleges, so we're getting on there.
Yeah, you're gonna be busy and your parents are gonna be busy too.
Yep.
Oh, good.
And you know, we know that the seniors sort of had to take it tough this year because of our not being able to have them park on.
Yeah, the lottery's just starting for
So I
that.
just wanted to make
Oh,
sure the
good.
committee knew. It was brought to our attention that the park and ride, which is a public municipal lot, was becoming more full every day, and there were people in the businesses downtown that were concerned because, you know, there weren't enough spots for people like both the customers and the employees to park. Mr. Lucia, you know, looked at his lots and found 14 spots that are not in the lower lot. And so, because he can't accommodate every senior, decided the most fair way to do it was to create a lottery. So they have had a lottery, and so these first 14 people, I think starting next week, will be able to park on site, which will free up, you know, 14 spots, you know, in the park and ride, which, you know, will relieve a little bit of the stress. So I was very happy that we could do that once it was brought to our attention. I appreciate the patience of the students, because I know, you know, you look forward to being a senior to be able to park on
Park, right.
campus. And but I just wanted the committee to know that we did make that adjustment in case you hear about, you know, concerns
Okay.
from the downtown merchants. But, you know, I think we all worked together and came up with something that will at least help a little bit.
Right.
It won't help completely, but it'll help a little bit.
So how many of the kids what's the number that we have for the kids that, once the turf field is done?
Is Peter here? Peter told me, I think when I asked him that question, it was in the area of, we have about 50 slots that were in that lot that are lost. Now, some of those are visitors parking, you
Right.
know, there's a few visitors parking there. But, you know, I don't even know if he can accommodate every senior. Some years,
There's
not every
93
senior.
of us, I think, this year.
Yeah, and of course, they don't all drive their cars, but, you know, it's, you know, it's usually right down to the wire in terms of getting everybody a spot if possible. And there have been some years where there hasn't been an opportunity to do it. If you got the wrong number, you didn't really,
Yeah, well, I'm
Make it-
glad to see that you worked with the town, because we don't wanna upset them.
no,
You know,
no.
the people that are coming to shop and to work
No.
here and stuff.
But we
so
also
that's
don't
good.
wanna send a message to the students that, you know, they're sort of second-class citizens. You know, it's a municipal lot, it's open to people in the public, they park, they come to school
Yeah,
early.
public.
So that's why we said, well, you know, if there's something we can do to help, you know, then we're gonna try, and like I said, Peter was able to figure out a way to, you know, come up with 14 slots and make those available, so I think it'll be helpful.
So,
It is a goodwill gesture, certainly, once we understood what the problem was.
so the form to be eligible for that lottery is due tomorrow at 2:15?
Yep.
And is that the same form that's gonna be used for the remaining 50 after November?
This lottery is pulling, the first 14 will get it right away for their spots, but then the people that come afterwards are they have the first option for the spots that are open up once the field is all set.
So you do the lottery once?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anyone here from the public that would like to talk about anything on the agenda? Okay, we're gonna ask that the PTA president, Jill, come on up. Thanks for coming.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Jill.
Hi there.
Has your busy year started
Oh,
yet?
My busy year from last year never ended,
Yeah.
Ah, I remember those days.
right?
Yes.
There are no breaks. Thank you for having us here, and thank you for having Pam for representing the school committee at our membership meeting.
Oh, sure, it's my
That was
pleasure.
great.
Great event.
Thank you. So we have 3 goals this year. Number 1, have fun. Number 2, get more people involved so we can have more fun. And number 3, to continue to raise money so that we can support technology, fundraisers, speakers, enrichment throughout the schools. In K through 5, we help out with helping to fund each of the grade level field trips. Each grade goes on a field trip. We help to fund them as much as we can. At Georgetown Middle High School, we fund peer mentoring, Jump Up and Go at the middle school, and cyberbullying or a bullying program. We are also trying to continue to fund a little bit of the specialties. Last year we funded the rock wall at Pembroke for Red Sox Day, and this year we just approved funding for a group of the high school chorus to go to Boston Symphony Orchestra. So as we have money, we're trying to spread it across the specialties, especially because those teachers do so much to support the schools and the PTA. So one way that we're trying to accomplish everything, those 3 goals, is to have a better balance of our givebacks, which are the events and activities we do that aren't meant to raise money, they're just meant to bring the community together. That doesn't mean that they don't cost money. It just means that the money we bring in covers those events. So we want to have a better balance of the givebacks and the fundraisers. So last year we cut our fundraisers in half, and thanks to auction we were still able to bring in the money to fund everything that we promised the schools. This year, because it's not an auction year, the balance is a little bit off, but we're trying to make sure that we always have at the very least a 2-to-1 ratio. For every 1 fundraiser, we want to have 2 givebacks. So again, just trying to get, a big part of the PTA isn't just raising money, it's getting people involved, getting people to be part of what we're doing, and just to bring the community together. So in terms of givebacks this year, we've got Horribles Parade, which is great for everyone on November 1st. We've got Spelling Bee at Pembroke. We've got Ski Club, high school scholarships, 4. Last year, only 3 people applied, so we hope we'll get at least 4, so we can give out 4 scholarships. And we have K through 5 yearbook among some of the givebacks that we're doing. We have a new one this year, a family night out at a pro hockey game up at the Verizon Arena in Manchester. So here's how that works. We got 100 tickets secured right on the ice in the goals section of the arena to watch the Manchester Monarchs play. And for everyone that buys a ticket, we all sit together as a community. And on top of that, Mr. Polston at Pembroke is helping to coordinate a group of students all grades, pre-K through high school through 12th, to sing God Bless America at the start of the game. So I have a group of students that sing with all the families sitting together to watch. And of course the tickets are discounted. For that night it's normally $31.50, and tickets will be $20 flat fee for all the tickets. So we're hoping to have a good turnout, and we're just starting to get the group together. And then in terms of fundraisers, you guys have a list. We added one from the list, which I'll talk about. We just wrapped up a few fundraisers. We had our first ever Parents' Night Out cruise down the Merrimack, which was really, really fun. And we got a great night. We were blessed with a great night.
The weather was perfect.
It was perfect. And then we wrapped up the Pearlie and Pembroke book fairs, which were great. Lots of kids were really excited about reading, and we promoted literacy as well as raising some money. We've got the Change Project going on this month at Pearlie and Pembroke, where students bring in their loose change if they want to, and the classes that win get a smoothie party. And then coming up,
Wellness.
yeah, health and wellness smoothie party.
That's a great idea, I like that.
And they get tumblers. They get these really cool tumbler kind of giveaway mugs that the smoothies go in and then they can take home. Coming up in January, we've got casino night, which is always a blast. And then in the spring, we have fashion show planned. We're still looking for a chair for that event, so depending on if we have somebody to run it, we will have fashion show. If not, we'll replace it with perhaps another cruise or something else. The fundraiser that is not on your list that we are bringing back is butter braids. We had butter braids are those
breads.
frozen treats that everybody loves. And last year when we pulled it, everybody came to me and said, "Where are my butter braids?" So we're adding it back in November, which will tie in nicely to the holiday, as a lot of people like to serve them at their Christmas, Hanukkah, holiday celebrations. So we added in butter braids. And the one that I didn't mention is the holiday fair, craft fair, which Mrs. Began does on November 15th. She has over 40 vendors already signed up. It's a great community event where we just sort of happen to have a great side effect of raising money. So she's got pictures with Santa, she's got a cookie walk, she's got face painting, craft room,
Free
vendors,
popcorn.
free popcorn.
Which I burnt last
I
year.
can't even remember the full list of everything
That's
she
my popcorn
has.
machine that you
It
guys
is
all
your
use.
popcorn machine.
My popcorn machine goes around the town on all these
I
different.
know, and the students knew how to run the popcorn machine. I burned it.
There you go.
That's a really fun event.
That's
It was
best thing we
so,
ever bought.
forward to that.
so much
It's
fun.
really fun.
So that's what
So
we've
where are
got.
you having that?
That's it, Pearlie.
That's a Pearlie.
That's at Pearlie, so it's down like the hallways, you
Oh,
set
it's
up
all
the
the way
vendors.
down.
Whole
Yeah.
building is
Building, I mean,
consumed.
it's-
Oh, that's neat.
And it was packed last year, and
Oh,
more
it was,
people
yeah.
left saying, wow, this is the first time I actually went to a fundraiser where the people were coming out with bags of stuff.
Oh, good.
Because everything, Heidi was very clear about that, everything is really inexpensive. And they have a teachers donate cakes
There's
and
a teacher
pies.
bake
and-
sale.
Like I know I made something last year and you put the recipe with it and,
Oh, that's
so,
a
yeah,
nice
they're-
idea.
she's got it, it's amazing
It
how
is
she's got that.
amazing. And this
set
year
up.
it's going to be even better,
Yeah.
so we're excited. And we're tying it in with butter braids where we'll have some samples and some order forms, so it all
The
comes
butter braids
together.
there. Okay.
Yes, butter braids will be there.
Great. That's a reason in of itself to go.
Yeah.
Delicious.
So that's what we have in store.
That's good, I commend you for all the new things, it's exciting. You know, like, I think the PTA does a great job, they always do, the GEF, we're very fortunate to have them. It just seems like every year, you know, even, you know, I'll take the blame, when I was president for 4 years, we did, you know, we didn't spice it up too much, because sometimes people resisted that, but I think it's great to see the new things, and I think the cruise down the Merrimack was a great idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, you were definitely blessed with that, so.
I have to give Rachel Nielsen credit for that.
Yeah, that was
hers.
her idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you guys are doing a great job
Thank
thinking
you.
about different things and, you know.
So are there any of these things that you're gonna do, you're gonna solicit students and staff during the day that the committee would have to approve?
We might as well just do it all at once if there is.
That's a good question.
Or are most of them just things that you're doing, you're getting support from
It
parents
doesn't look it, other
outside?
than the change project.
Most of
but
them
that's-
are parents from outside. I can't remember, perhaps it's spelling bee, we had some high school students helping, and I can't remember if
Yeah, but
Mrs. Began
that's not
has
really your
them on
fundraiser,
craft.
so that's not a worry. It's more the fundraisers.
Fundraisers,
No, it looks like
Mm-mm.
they're not.
I don't see it.
no, we don't have anything where we
Great, so-
need help.
No vote required.
So Jill, I've been remiss in contacting you. And at first I want to second everything Barbie said, because I want to raise something, but it's not as a criticism. But I was surprised, I looked at this and said, oh, wait, nobody's thought about the closing of the Pembroke as a fundraising opportunity. And I didn't know if that idea has been floated by you or not, but
We
there's.
talked about it that night,
we-
right?
I
At
I
the-
thought
at
it
the
would've-
tour?
yeah, that
Alon,
when,
can I
Sure.
just, don't mean to interrupt, but, at Hurley and Pembroke, there are two, groups of teachers that have volunteered to be on a committee.
oh, great.
Yeah, we're
They
trying
work
to
together,
put that-
And I have
That wouldn't be
actually-
PTA.
Just haven't heard from us yet, Jill, but I have actually asked them to include parents, and we do have a couple of ideas that would be ways to not only commemorate, you know, Pembroke and, but also could be some fundraising,
Yeah.
so.
That's good.
Mrs. Mars got that covered, showing true interlock between parents and teachers.
Yeah, well, it was mentioned at the tour, and they did say that the
Right.
local PTA in other towns had done it, so that's.
That's a
Right.
great idea. We had
Yeah.
talked about it for next year at the beginning of the
Yeah.
school year, but
Right.
not at the end, so Mrs. Mar has that covered.
Good, I'm excited
Glad to
hear.
know, glad to know. I just wanted
That's
to
a
make
great
sure it
idea.
didn't like fall through the cracks.
As they say, they will be contacting
You
you.
just wanna balance that to make, I mean, everything shouldn't be a fundraiser. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's a ceremonial, cultural support, community kind of thing. So, you know, depending on what we do, you know, I know some places will like sell bricks or something, you know, but then they incorporate it somehow, but.
I think what he
Love
was
to-
talking
I'd
about, he
love
said
to
like
hear- I'd love to hear
buy
more.
like admittance into the school and they give you a can of spray paint.
Oh,
And you
that,
go
yes,
in
I've
and you
heard of those.
spray
Cool.
wherever you want.
Yeah, yeah.
That- It was more like a
Yeah,
fun thing,
like a
but we
fun
were
thing.
kinda like, oh, really? Like,
Like you,
I mean,
yeah.
Well, there were so
but
many
he said it made a
things.
ton of money.
Or, you know,
I know, yeah.
Yes.
or
called
or
encouraging
you invite
destruction.
alumni back to purchase, you know, I don't know, one of those colored pipes or something. I mean, but my,
Covered in asbestos.
I covet a lot of
Those are not healthy for you.
the hostas that are in those gardens, you know, like those are things that I think would just be a shame if they went to waste when a lot of,
Yes.
there's so many gardeners in our community who I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah.
would go
Oh,
and dig those
absolutely.
up
Yes, absolutely.
and might even pay for them as well.
Yeah.
if
That
that was-
actually was an idea. that-
Yeah.
I thought we could.
A lot of foliage,
Because there are
yes.
so many plants in those courtyards, so to open it up and
Yeah.
sell those.
That's a great
Good,
idea.
we'll be looking forward to hearing that.
So we'll be adding that
Okay.
as well. And thank you for the feedback, because that, I mean, the PTA isn't just me or the executive board, it's everybody in the community that provides feedback. Last year, the big feedback was, would you please stop sending me the blink 8 times for
Yeah.
every child I have? So we centralized it, and now we're ready for more feedback and more things that we can improve.
That's good, you're
Great
doing a
job.
great job.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
for
you, Jill.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me talk to you
Yes.
guys and for approving our fundraiser.
How's membership?
Membership. It's doing well. We had the same membership targets this year. Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot. So we had last year we had targets for families, and each school that met their membership would get $500 back to the school immediately. And this year we added an additional teacher membership participation, where each school also has to have, on top of their family membership, 10 teachers or administrator. It could be anybody. I'm using teachers loosely. And the schools Pembroke is closest to meeting its number. The other schools are behind. Pearlie has, I think, about 20 more members that they need. All schools need more teachers, and middle school and high school are behind. The deadline was today, but we're going to extend it. We're going to extend it. I have to check in with our director of membership, and hopefully we'll get more people becoming members and getting the perks. There's perks to being a member. There's discounts at Hertz and Staples and AARP and Sylvan Learning and a whole list of others that I cannot remember, in addition to, just being part of the PTA.
And there's a cost, right? What is the fee?
There's a $15
$15?
fee for the whole family.
Oh.
And we added a perk in for the teachers this year, that teachers that are members of the PTA will get a teacher-only paint night with Miss Cannon that will be sponsored by the PTA. And at a very low cost, basically just for the supplies and being members. So the teachers meet their membership goals,
That would
then
be fun.
they get a
It's like
paint night.
fun.
Well, that is the T in PTA, right?
Yes.
It is. So
Do you
we're
know-
trying not to just drag people in, but give something back.
So do you know yet when the deadline will be extended to? I just wanted to put out the word.
I have to check in with
Facebook,
Kathy Hogan, who's our director of membership. I'm fairly certain she sent me an email earlier today while I was working. I'm guessing it will be a week at the most,
Okay.
because we don't want to keep, we would love to keep extending it, but we need to submit our membership to national, and there's a deadline on that.
So I can check with Kathy about that too and just
I can follow
get
up
the
with
word
you.
out. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good.
She's my next door neighbor, so.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Like next door.
Go, knock. She'll tell you.
Well, I urge everyone to become a part of the PTA,
And
because it is a
friend.
great,
Very good friend.
it is a great group, and like you said, you do get a lot of perks.
I think the main concern is, if I join, are you going to call me and make
Yeah,
me do
are you
stuff?
gonna make me do
And I
stuff?
assure people, no. I mean, if I'm gonna call you, I'm calling you anyway, right? It doesn't matter if you're a member or not. The message we've been trying to really get out is, if you pay your $15 family membership fee, then you help your school not only get the $500 immediate perk, but all that money goes back to the schools. And
Right.
there's no other part of being a member except if you want to be involved, you can, and if you don't have time and you just voice an opinion, that's great too. And if I did my math right, if every single family joined, I know that's not realistic, but if every single family joined, we would raise something like $4,800 just on membership alone, which would mean less fundraisers and more givebacks. But I know that's not realistic. Do you have any other questions? Anything else on your minds? Any other feedback?
You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Be in
time.
touch if you need anything.
I will. I'm not shy.
Okay, Chris DeFranco, athletic director, we're gonna talk about the ski team, which I was really excited to see. Were you?
Yes, oh, absolutely, completely.
I knew
How's
you
everyone?
would be.
Good.
So yeah, this is many, many years in the works. Every year, a few people kind of approach me and say, "We'd like to do a ski team," and we look at the numbers and we say we don't have enough kids to do it. But then we've had such successful co-ops with Triton that we kind of approached each other and said, "What if we got together?" And we said we might need another school, so we brought Newburyport in as well. And the goal is to get at least 15 kids, which is boys and girls combined. We can max out at around 15 and 15. We don't think we're going to get there, but if we do, that would be great. It's mostly in January. They ski at Bradford, which is really convenient for Georgetown kids especially. And it's pretty much every day except it's Monday through Thursday, because a lot of the families do go skiing on the weekends, on Fridays. So they kind of take that into account when they set up the season. As far as the cost goes, that's probably the biggest thing. And a big part of it is the ski lift tickets, which you can't really avoid. We actually got a little bit of a discount. It's $17 a day. If a student wanted to get a season pass, they could. It's a lot more expensive. It runs $665, and we'd deduct that from their user fee if we wanted to. We're going to treat it just like golf, where we go user funded for the first few years, and if it can sustain itself, then we'll put it kind of in the budget. So we think it's going to be really good. Other teams, Manchester Essex and Masco, who are Cape Ann League teams, and then Haverhill, Austin Prep, North Andover, and St. John's. So it's called the North Shore Ski League. So it's independent of the Cape Ann League. So it's not part, it's a completely different league. As far as who will be allowed, definitely everyone 9 through 12. And then if there's room, we will let the middle schoolers, consistent with our other sports.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a coach yet?
No, we haven't been able to post it
Yeah,
until tomorrow.
I wouldn't want to post it until you approved it.
Yeah.
Thought that was probably the wrong way to go about it. So
Yeah, so if,
he's been he got the posting done. He's patiently waiting
Yep.
to see if this.
So we got approval from the MIAA, which was a big deal, and approval from the North Shore Ski League, which was a big deal. So those steps are taken care of. Which
Do you have anyone in mind as a coach? Like,
there's a
is
few different
this-
people, yeah.
Yeah, that are in-house?
There's both.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, people have approached me about it. So.
That's good. Well, everybody that skis knows it's not a cheap sport.
No.
Yeah,
Right.
but racing's a little different.
It's like
That's
hockey.
the one thing that we want
Yeah,
to find
it's like
someone who can really teach the racing, because
Yeah.
not a lot of people know how to do that.
Yeah, I don't think personally that the cost would intimidate people
No, I
that
don't
are
think so either.
big
No.
on skiing, right? You
Right.
can attest to that,
That's
being a
right,
skier.
that's correct.
$17 a day seems very reasonable.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
No, I think it's great. I think, I'm hoping that you won't have a problem getting the kids to come out.
Yeah, and then the on the other end, if we get more than the 15 of each gender, only 15 can race per day, but we could carry more and just kind of rotate it, because it's a JV program for the first 2 years. That's their rule for sort of induction into the league, to make sure that we can have success as a team, because they don't want a team coming in and then dropping out, which I guess they've had happen before. It's
And
funny
that's
that-
what you do with golf, right? You only send so many to the,
Exactly.
right, so
Yep.
that's good.
Yeah.
And you don't have any complaints
No.
from people that,
And it's
they're
a
not getting
similar
enough.
thing where they're getting a great deal,
Yeah.
being able to golf every day.
oh, that's
It's on a
good.
beautiful golf course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the student athletes will provide their own transportation.
Yeah,
But
the
we're so lucky to have Bradford
Absolutely.
10 minutes from Georgetown. I mean, it's a wonderful mountain with great people who run it and so many resources. And
yeah, the
it's
cost
just
of
a-
busing would have been astronomical.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it just makes sense to take full advantage of Bradford being so close. I think a lot of kids will enjoy it and like this idea.
And we have the ski club, which I think will feed into it a little bit too.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and I think the ski club, you do see the numbers go down as the kids get older.
Yep.
Right, so hopefully those kids that drop out of that will then move on to that if they wanna get involved.
Right,
So,
yes, it would be a logical progression for them.
Students' perspective.
I think it's a good idea. I know a lot of people that actually both work at Bradford and also like are into skiing but don't get to do it often.
Yeah, and it's a pretty short season, so I think sometimes kids don't like to play a winter sport because they have a job or something like that. But it's only a month, really.
Well, and it's a different kind of sport,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, if you're not inclined to do wrestling or basketball, this is an option for you.
And winter's our lowest enrollment for the 3 seasons, so we have room to grow.
Great, that's great. Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the creation of a Georgetown-hosted 2-year ski team co-op program with a stipend to be determined as presented.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, I look forward to you coming back, giving us an update.
Yeah.
Well, he'll be coming back after the fall sports, right?
I'm gonna buy some skis now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for getting this all
Sure.
together.
I know, that is good. Okay, we're gonna do a little, changing around of the agenda. We're going to ask that, Dr. DeRoche and, Amanda Gerard come on up and talk about the mentor program. Which this is another exciting program to talk about. Thank you for coming out.
Sure, that Amanda and Julie have been working on for a couple of years now. And Heidi Monjo before that. Heidi was good enough to set the program up initially and
And she's
run
still
it.
on the
Is she still on
committee.
your
Yeah,
committee?
yeah, along
Good.
with Guy Prescott too.
Oh, good.
Yes. So.
So we're excited to bring forward some changes that we made to the mentoring program. We thought we would just give you some of the highlights of what we've been thinking about and now finally putting into action. We have been able to coordinate a program that allows us to work with new teachers that have been recently hired to the district over the course of the summer. And so what we wanted to do was have 2 full days with them at the beginning of before the school year started, to get them acclimated to the system, what Georgetown schools offer, how our programs run, what are the initiatives that we're doing. And you can't always do that after the school year has begun. It's a pretty busy, you know how it is. It's very busy as the school year gets underway. And we know it's a stress reliever for new teachers to be able to give them time to think and ask questions, and for us to give them information that, you know, sometimes you're embarrassed to ask as a new teacher because you feel like maybe I should know this already, but.
And even some things that are logistics, like getting a login for the computer and getting them up and running with how they can
How do I
log
get my
onto their account.
email?
How do I get my email?
Those
Where do I
things.
make my photocopies?
Who do if my computer won't talk to my projector, who do
Right.
I get for like tech support and things
Right,
like that?
absolutely.
So it was helpful to have some time just to fight through a little bit of that, you know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Housekeeping.
yes, and to answer questions as they come up, because each teacher comes with a different set of, you know, pieces of information, whether it's being straight out of school or having taught for a year somewhere else maybe and relocating.
Or a career change,
Or a
because
career
we
change.
see lots of career, you know, there's been lots of career change teachers in the past few years that we've been working with.
Right, absolutely. So we were happy that we were able to organize that for the beginning of the year this year. And
I did
Amanda does. go
I
ahead.
also did a mentor training this summer that I ran for professional development to get some more teachers. We had from Pearly School, we had a teacher and a couple from the middle high school that got trained in, they have to be trained in an induction program to meet the state requirements. So we got, I don't know, 4 more teachers trained, I think, 3 or 4 more teachers trained with that. And we set up the schedule for the meetings, and instead of 4 meetings this year, we're having 6.
There's so much to go through with the new teacher evaluation system and learning that process, but also understanding where you are in your curriculum, how do you work with your grade level or your department heads, and just to support teachers a little bit more throughout the school year. We felt it would be more important for us to see them more as opposed to less.
Yes.
And so.
And it was definitely interesting. The topics were, well, one of them is just meeting their mentor and, you know, getting a feel for where they're at. But today we had our first like mini seminar on unpacking the teacher's rubric and what it means to be proficient. And so it was a really great discussion. We even had a teacher come who's not in the mentor program but just wanted to participate in the discussion. So just that kind of collegiate sharing and really the professional aspect of being a teacher was pretty awesome today. The meeting was scheduled to go until 4, but people were still there at 4:30, and so that always feels pretty good, you know.
Excellent.
We've also got professional culture, which we're going to be bringing in Liz Marchetti, and she's going to be kind of helping me discuss as one little part of it. You know, tone for email and just the way that we communicate with each other as adults, how sometimes you can hit little snafus with things like a tone from email or how you present yourself in your online persona with all the social media and all that. So we're going to be addressing some of those topics that come up and how, you know, teachers.
And also how to connect with the community. What are some things that you can do in the classroom, but also what are the expectations of the school system in terms of being a professional and working for the school system? And
Yeah.
so we're
Because
excited
that's
about
part
that.
of the rubric and the evaluation, is it not, for
Oh,
teachers?
it is.
It's
It
standard
is.
4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
also, it's something that we felt like we wanted to move to the beginning of the year because we get close to parent-teacher conference nights, we get close to report cards, and we wanted to be able to set the support system before that and be able to speak to some of the issues that we've seen come across for teachers and
There's a
deal
lot of
with that.
research that supports the fact that new teachers really struggle in their first several years
Absolutely.
with this.
Yes.
Because, you know, sometimes, you know, they hear and see things that they wonder about, and, you know, sometimes if you're an ambitious new teacher, you know, you have to walk that balance a little bit too. So it's good you're putting up at the start of the year, I think. I really think that's important.
Student engagement is always that's a timeless topic.
And, you know, and January is a nice place for that because, and you know just from that trajectory of how a new teacher feels throughout the course of the year, December and January tend to be difficult months for teachers because you're over the excitement of the beginning of the school year and now you're in it, you're in the work. And January tends to be a time where people come back from a break and they have to reorganize and reacclimate themselves to what is it that I'm trying to do? What are my goals for the work that I'm about to put forth for the rest of the year?
And it also kind of coincides with their mid-cycle evaluation with the new teacher evaluation system, because all the new teachers are on a 1-year cycle. So they get a mid-year evaluation where they get to sit down and the purpose of the rubric is to bring on that reflection piece and kind of coach them through the process on how to reflect on their own practice.
Absolutely. February is formative assessment, and we decided to put that there because February tends to be a time, if you are a content area teacher, you're starting to look at, okay, what is the work that I've done over the course of the year as we prepare for state testing, et cetera, et cetera. How are my students following within this trajectory that I've expected for them over the course of the year? And that's a time where we start to really identify what is the work that I have done, has it been successful with the remediations that I put in place for students? And so we tend to look at that as a time of what are some more things that we can do to make sure that our students are where we expect them to be.
And if they haven't gotten it yet, what else can we do?
Right, right. What are our options and what more can we build in? So May, we chose family and community engagement because, I mean, obviously that's something that we work on throughout the entire course of the year. But I felt like May would be a good time for that because even though you're kind of getting into this closing area of your school year with your children, what you're also thinking about is where are they going after they leave me, and how can I make sure that I support my students, and what are some of the mechanisms I can do and put in place to ensure that over the course of the rest of the year and through the summer.
Yeah.
So we liked that place there. We also have some really exciting things that are kind of new and different. We decided to implement an instructional rounds situation throughout the school system because our teachers work with their mentors and they'll go into classrooms and watch each other and observe each other and give feedback. But they very rarely get into other teachers' classrooms to get a sense of how is not even the same content being taught, but how are they dealing with students differently? What are some of the strategies they're using that I can try to use in my practice? So that is pretty exciting.
Yeah,
like this.
we piloted it last year and we put it into the second year of the mentor program. So in the second year, it was really actually pretty exciting. Like last year I had the honor of going into, I think I went into 15 to 20 different classes, and I got to see everybody in my building and what they're actually doing. And I was like, it was really fun because I got to see how people worked with kids, and I'm like, wow, that kid behaves like that in their class, and in my class, they're, and so it was cool to see how they interacted because different teachers have different relationships with kids, and I'm like, what's working for them? I'm gonna use that. That's going in my bag of tricks.
Right, it's
It's
based
about-
off the
it's
medical
about-
model.
That's right.
It's
Yeah.
based, you go to a teaching hospital and the doctors take turns, explaining what they're seeing and doing. So that's, the concept is the same.
Yeah.
And actually, we're gonna be, as administrative teams, we're gonna be going a couple times this year and doing instructional rounds, looking specifically at the kinds of strategies teachers are using in particular areas of the rubric.
And what we did last year was we brought the rubric with us, and we would had 2 different color highlighters for everybody. And they would highlight in one color things that they saw that teacher doing. That if an administrator walked in, they would know that would be acknowledged in a walkthrough. But then they highlighted in another color things that they weren't sure an administrator would see if they walked into their room. Like, what was something that you saw that you're not sure an administrator would see? And we talked a lot about strategies, like, well, how could you show your student engagement, or how could you prove your student motivation? It led to a lot of really cool discussions, and it helped us understand the rubric a lot better, I think.
And it builds culture, because it's not easy for teachers to welcome other teachers into
I
their
have
classroom.
to tell you how impressive that was,
Yeah.
the number of teachers who opened their doors and said, come on in, it would be great. And
I don't
it
think
was so
anyone told me
impressive.
no. And
And
You're hard
that's,
to tell
and
no
this
to
is
an
a very different.
It's a good thing,
I
it's a
just
good
show
thing.
up. I'm gonna come in right now. Is that cool?
Tenacious would be a good word.
But we didn't want it to be. We didn't want to
Not
go
threatening.
in and have it be anything like rehearsed or We just wanted to see what everybody's. What are you doing? Show me some of your good stuff, because we talk about it in the teachers' room, but it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to see it. So it's pretty exciting. And I did even have a few people I started with the mentors. Like, we're going to come in and see Kate Cataldo teach. We're going to come in and see these like exemplar teachers who have been doing it teach. But then it opened up, and there were teachers from all over. I mean, I was in every single discipline. I went to everything. I was like, next I'm going to math. Next I'm going to art. We're going to go to computers, and the school. I liked school, so it was fun for me. I was in every single class. But we have
It's really impressive.
4 days scheduled, and then I'll be flip-flopping. I'll do one session at the high school and one session at Pembroke or Pearlie, depending on the day. And one will be in the morning and one will be in the afternoon. So they know the dates now, but we'll just have to work it out with coverage.
Sounds like a great way to build community and trust and just.
And learning from each other,
Right.
which is really what.
Right.
And I've had
nature of
other
the work.
teachers that are not part of the mentor program say, like, can I do instructional rounds with you? Can I come too?
See, that's why,
Yeah.
that's why we want to do
Absolutely.
it as a
Well,
district.
And how does the teacher become a mentor? Are they,
You have to go through
here they?
Well, they have to be teaching in the school district they have to have professional status, be teaching in Georgetown for 4 years, and they have to participate in a mentor training.
I mean, they have to have an interest. But,
We
right,
have to, they
right,
have
they
to
have to be
want
willing to make the commitment, because it is a commitment.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so that's the question I had. What is do you find that you get resistance from teachers about wanting to become a mentor? Cause it is a big commitment.
Well, no, because it's voluntary, so they've come to me wanting to be one, so I
Okay.
haven't met any
Well,
resistance.
volunteers are hard to come by, so you don't have a problem.
I haven't had
That's great.
an issue, no, and we have, mentors in every discipline except for one or two. I think there's one.
Do you know what those disciplines are?
There's none in the business.
I wanna say business.
I think
That's
it's the
our only
business.
one, but some of our business teachers teach other
Teach
parts
some of
of
your
it.
Yeah, so
classes.
they're
So
busy.
it's not necessarily just
Oh,
that.
How many new teachers do we have each year?
It
who-
varies.
Varies, we could say 10 to 15, some, it depends on the year, really,
Yeah.
it honestly does, it's hard to say.
That's so interesting. I mean, I was thinking, if there's 2 or 3, that's a pretty
No,
tiny
no,
group,
there's more
but
than
10
2 or
is-
3.
There's
I
more
would
than two
say-
or three,
Oh,
because,
definitely. There are retirements too, and so when people retire, you're
and
rebuilding
it's
your.
support staff
base.
too, there's speech and language, and it's not all content teachers, but everybody falls in that, anybody operating on a preliminary license is
So
part of the mentor.
Would a new teacher's mentor be in their discipline at the same grade level, similar grade level? Would it-
Similar grade level,
Same
discipline,
Okay.
usually.
So somebody could be a mentor but not have a mentee in a given year.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
oh, absolutely.
Do you have enough mentors generally? I mean, just.
Well, that's why they do the
Okay.
annual training, because they're always recruiting.
Speaks so well to the climate
Or,
in our
Frank Goldberg was
schools.
a mentor, but
Yeah,
he
but
retired.
he retired, right.
How many are there? I'm just curious.
How many mentors
like,
are there?
Certified, or that's not the right word, but
About 12, yeah.
So that's about.
Well,
one
12
to
at the high school, and then there's,
Some do more than one.
Some
and
do
then there's
one,
at
and
least,
then
I can
one
think
or
off the
two.
top of my head of
5?
4 from Pearlie, and at least 3
From Pembroke.
from Pembroke.
Right, so we have
You
a
know.
pretty.
But Pembroke and Pearlie don't have as
Nice
many
ratio.
new teachers as the high school does, so.
In their
the
first
bulk-
2 years.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so the bulk of the mentoring is happening at the high school right now.
Mhm.
There's some at the
Yeah,
elementary.
and a couple of years ago, it was at Pembroke.
Right.
We
It
hired a lot of
depends,
new
yeah, it
teachers, so it
depends
really
on
depends
who's
on who's
retiring
retiring
in
or
that
leaving.
sense, and,
Sure.
how many people, we have to look at that way. All right, so one other thing that we do is the mentoring professional, a professional learning community, and we do that around a book. We have a book club, and that book club meets monthly, and we choose a different title every year, and this year we're doing Teach Like a Champion by Doug Lamov.
And this year we were gonna try monthly, and then the
And-
next
and
month,
blog postings.
blog posting.
Creating
So-
a way to do this on the web.
Mm-hmm. And Teach Like a Champion is a pretty cool book to start with, I think, because it comes with, you read about, say formative assessment or something, and then there's a DVD that goes along with it, and you can see the practices that they're talking about. You can see a teacher implementing them. They have video clips. So I think it'll lend itself to trying it with this, blogging component as well, because we can put up a
post
clip.
videos
I can
and
post a
clips
clip
and
on a closed
ask
YouTube,
questions.
and then people can comment on it, as if we were in a meeting.
That's great. It is.
It's been fun.
Yeah, it's
It really has been fun, I have to say.
Oh, and the last thing.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No,
am I
go
cutting
right
off?
ahead.
The last thing that Julie and I have been talking about lately is that with the standard 4, now this is another way that the mentor coordinator can report back to building principals at the end of the year and let them know if participants have participated appropriately in the mentoring program. They have to keep a log, they have to observe so many people, they have to attend the 6 meetings. And
So last year, we created like a spreadsheet kind of document that we would share with principals at the end of the program and let people know.
And, they've met this professional
Share the different
requirement.
things
but
that teachers have done, because teachers have other opportunities as well to join,
Tech
TED
Tuesday.
Talks that we're doing,
Right.
Tech Tuesdays, I mean, other things that we offer in the
TED
district.
Talks?
Yeah, we're doing TED
do.
Talks this year.
That's great, that's great.
But that's
What
open
is
to
that,
anybody,
technology,
that's open.
entertainment? What does TED stand for?
TED, do you know the TED series?
I do.
The
Yes,
seniors?
yeah.
It's about sharing information.
Sure.
It's about
So we,
information
so I think we
sharing.
picked, there's 4 sessions, right? 4 TED Talks this year.
Mhm.
And they're open to anybody in the district, not just the mentor program, but the
And
mentors could
we have other
certainly come.
people that come from outside the district too, so it's kinda interesting. So they have many opportunities to participate in other things as well, and so it's kind of keeping track of, here are all the things that I participated in addition to the mentoring requirements, and, you know, keeping track of all of that.
It's great, you know, it sounds great.
It's come a long way.
It has, yeah, it really has.
It has come a long
Yeah, I
way.
haven't heard.
And you
That's
can,
good.
a lot of it's sold by the enthusiasm of the people who are leading it.
Well,
so
I do have to
that
say
I
that.
have to say.
You, you definitely have like that excitement in you. Every time I talk to you, I'm like, oh my God, I felt so good when I talked to her. Like, I see her in Duncan's and I see her in Crosby's, like, and my son is lucky enough to have her this year.
you.
But,
Yes, I
yeah,
have.
I just
Mine
love
too.
your excitement and your energy and your enthusiasm and, you know, being a Spanish teacher. And then you're saying, you know, you love going to math and English, I mean, that's just great.
Well, yeah, it's really, I came into teaching through an alternative route. I didn't go the traditional, go to college, study Spanish to teach Spanish.
Yep.
And I actually very much resisted it. But when I did my, when I did do
If we're being
my,
honest.
true.
But look, it worked out for you in the
It
end.
worked out for me in the end, but when I did do my certification, I went through an alternative means, and I had to observe an astronomical amount of teachers. So my first 2 years, I spent popping around all over Timberlane Regional High School, like in all the different classes,
Oh,
and it's
funny.
fun. That is fun to see all the good stuff that kids are doing, and to see a kid who might be quiet and shy in my class because they don't like speaking in another language and it feels funny coming out of their mouth, and to see them in a math class and they shine, or you know, in a digital video class where they're all over these machines and doing things that I wouldn't have any idea on how to do. So it's cool to see different sides of the kids and to see what everybody's doing. It's
Well,
fun.
you are right too. In foreign language, I do think it is difficult for kids, especially like in that high school age where, you know, the littlest things could embarrass them. So you're right,
Oh,
having
yeah.
that language
Well,
come out,
Yeah.
you know, but you do a great job.
I tell my.
Gracias.
It's not something.
What does that mean? Yeah, I took French.
You took French. She can do that too.
So, do you have questions for us? We just wanted to share with you some, one of the projects we've been working on and let you know what we've been up to. in mentoring.
Thank you so much for sharing.
like you've
this.
been up to a
This
lot.
is
They have been up to a
Really
lot.
wonderful.
All
That's
good.
great.
Great.
Well,
Thanks so much.
We'll
Thanks
have
for
you
coming,
come
Amanda.
back,
Sure.
Yeah,
so we can just like, you know,
Talk
just
more.
get updates and stuff.
yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Julie, you might as well just hang there.
Oh, all right.
I think we're next.
Okay.
Yes, the next on the agenda, we're gonna talk about Common Core discussion.
All right, so we can do Common Core and then we'll do the MCAS.
Okay.
Okay, so, we're just gonna flip through the first, okay, so Julie and I were chatting about this, we had some goals for tonight. So one thing we wanna make sure we're doing is providing information about how we in the public schools here are using the Common Core. We also wanted to answer specific questions that have been asked regarding the standards and state assessments that have been, you know, circulating around, and we've heard them in a couple of forums now, one of which was your meeting last time. We want to, through this, we will share our experiences on implementing the standards, MCAS, and the park assessments, because we've had experience with all of them. I think one of the things we really hope to do is to try to take a balanced approach to looking at the issues, because, you know, it is a very polarizing, you know, discussion. And, you know, I think as educators, you know, our job is to try to look at all sides and have an open mind, but to really look again at how is it gonna impact our work. So, you know, in your packets, you know, we've all been doing research, but the Mass Department of Education did send a couple of things. I just want you to, they're on your table, they were not in your packet. One is 10 frequent, and they are up here, if anybody in the public that is interested, feel free to take a copy. 10 frequently asked questions about the Common Core state standards in park. There was an article in your packet on myths and facts. There's an article here on Duncan pushes back on attacks on Common Core standards. Again, it's just another person's viewpoint, but he speaks for the sort of the federal government level. Michael found an interesting article written by someone in a letter to President Obama, which I think was very interesting, and wanted to make sure you got that. At the selectmen's meeting the other night, a gentleman from the Pioneer Institute, Jamie
Gass.
he supplied 2 articles, so I picked them up and wanted to make sure that you had them as well. So the goal here is to just, try to, be as educated as possible about, what the issues are, because ultimately, we have to determine, how we're gonna handle it here. And then, obviously, there are some members of the public that are here tonight. If they are interested in joining in the discussion, we certainly have that as a goal. Okay, go ahead, Julie. Okay, so just very quickly, a big picture view, and this is again from our perspective for your consideration. What we see as positive aspects of what we've seen with the Common Core. To us, all the Massachusetts standards are really important guidelines for student learning. We could disagree and agree on what they all should look like and be, but at the end of the day, it's about standards that provide guidelines, so that we know that when students graduate from high school, they have had an accumulated body of knowledge and skills. So they're guidelines. It prohibits everyone from doing whatever they want, even though we know teachers will do wonderful things. There does need to be some consistency, and since we have been working with standards-based education now since the late 1990s, we have found that the standards in Massachusetts have been good guidelines, and our students are showing the results from that. The Common Core standards, I want to make sure that we all know that they're embedded in the Massachusetts frameworks, specific to each grade level, but they are not exclusively the Common Core. They go beyond the Common Core. And actually, if you look at the frameworks, the front page of the frameworks, it will say to you, Massachusetts Literacy Framework, and then it will say incorporating the Common Core. So that's been their goal all along, has been to go beyond just what the Common Core. In fact, if you look at the frameworks, you can't identify which are the Common Core and which, because they're all Massachusetts standards. We feel that the standards in Massachusetts are broad enough that the district can develop our grade level curriculum. So the standards only provide the guidelines. We develop the curriculum at the local level and how we want to take those standards and put them together. We believe, just from our, we believe that we have local control how to use and teach the standards. We don't have control over what the standards are necessarily, but we do have control on how we take the standards and use them. The district's currently using the materials, and we do believe that the positive aspect of these new frameworks is also that we aren't required to abandon our current texts and materials. We have added some materials to support the changes in the frameworks, but we're still using, I'd say 80% of our curriculum are materials that we're still using, because we don't use textbooks exclusively. We encourage teachers to be using texts, different trade books, different instructional materials. So we haven't had to abandon the current textbooks. I know that's been a fear that people might have wondered about. One of the things we also think is positive is testing has historically been aligned to the state standards, specifically MCAS. It isn't that the MCAS is a test that's separate from the standards. We feel like if we're teaching the standards and the students are learning the standards, that their performance on MCAS will match. And then we have loved the fact that the MCAS data that we get in the district is very useful to us. It's not just, here are the scores, and we have to figure out what's what. They give us a lot of the questions. We can actually look at the questions the students got right or wrong. We can try to dissect why that might have been the case. Our teachers will use the information they get to actually drive intervention groups and support instruction. So those are the positive aspects. On the other side, there are some questions and concerns that we think are something we should always think about. The fast pace and the timing of the new PARCC test is a problem. We feel that there's uncertainty with the exam itself and how it will be implemented because it's so new. It's really only been alive and well for the last, 1 year, but it's been in development for a couple more than that. But they've just started field testing and piloting. And with MCAS, it took us many years to kind of vet the questions and do that. So there's some uncertainty as far as we're concerned with the exam itself and how it's implemented. It is a computer-based test, so for some students that's going to be difficult, particularly in the writing expectations. So it hasn't been completely determined if the state goes with PARCC whether or not it's gonna be a computer-based test. They are talking about having a paper and pencil option, but I think they're also talking about charging districts a little bit more to make that option happen, because obviously they're discouraging that. They want the technology test. We think that's gonna pose a challenge. Differences with MCAS and the testing structure and the format of the questions. One of the reasons that students have done better on MCAS over the years is because we've had enough time for teachers to align their instruction to the kind of questions that students will need to be able to answer. We haven't had that kind of time to adjust to the park. And, you know, example, I got it, this is, maybe you saw the Globe North, but this is a grade 3 English Language Arts Literacy test question. You have read 2 texts about famous people in American history who solved a problem by working to make a change. Write an article for your school newspaper describing how Eliza and Carver faced challenges to change something in America. In your article, be sure to describe the detail why some solutions they tried worked and others did not work, and tell how the challenges each faced were the same and how they were different. So that's not your average 3rd grade question. And that's just an example they put in here. So what it's saying is that there is a different level of type of question, a different level of analysis. You know, it's going to take us some time to organize our instruction to prepare children for that kind, if Park is where the state goes. Questions about, is the test structured in an age-appropriate manner? They've been very clear that the expectations are ratcheted up, and the grades that things are being taught are more aggressive. So, for example, when Julie and I went to one of the first trainings on Park, you know, they said that the expectation of some children in kindergarten is going to be consistent with what it was in 1st and 2nd grade, you know, in the past. So, you know, that raises some concerns. Now, we didn't think kids could rise to the level of MCAS. They have. So maybe, you know, who knows how that's going to all work. But it's just something that we put on the table as something we're wondering about. You know, we don't know how the results will be reported in data, if the data will be as helpful as MCAS has been. There's really not been a lot that's come out about that. So we would really like to see the state pay attention to that in the future. You know, will administrating Park increase the achievement gap further between disabled ELL or non-disabled students? It's not been tried out, so we really don't know. And the constant changing of the bar at the state level. We always wonder, will we ever have sufficient performance? Will anybody ever be happy that we're at the level that we're at? So those are some questions and challenges to provide that balance. You know, I don't think we want to be known as pro Common Core, anti Common Core. I'm interested in looking at everybody's perspectives on this and seeing how we can make it work in Georgetown for us. Yep, go ahead, Julie. Do you have a question? Sure.
Now that you've articulated these,
Mhm.
have they been shared?
With who?
beyond? I mean, who would you share these with? Is there anybody
Oh,
at
yeah.
the state level that
Yes,
these concerns
yes,
have been
actually,
shared with?
this
This is part of
the
a
reason,
discussion
the
that's-
reason that well, there's a few things. I know for a fact the Superintendent's Association has been sending people to every Board of Education meeting. There was 88 people one time that I went, and it was talking about the pace of the initiatives, particularly Park being one. The Superintendent's Association, I'm the president of the Superintendent's Roundtable in this area, and we have brought that up with legislators and have talked frequently about that amongst ourselves. And our executive director, Tom Scott, has a seat at the table with the commissioner and the Board of Education. One of the things I would suggest that the school committee do is perhaps reach out to Mike Gilbert just to find out what the advocacy at the school committee level is. My sense is that they're very involved in the discussion at the table as well. And then,
Just to let you know, I did do
Oh,
that
did you?
today. I sent him an
Oh,
email
okay.
today. So
Great.
as soon as
And,
he gets back
you
to
know,
me,
that
I'll
all
let
of the administrative level and mass teachers are involved. So I think everybody's trying to weigh in on this. And so it certainly isn't something that everybody's it's not a fait accompli. Everybody's just said, oh, this is going to happen. Because if it was going to happen the way it was originally set up, it would have been happening now.
Right.
The fact that there was so much pressure put on to put the brakes on a little bit here, that's why there's a 2-year pilot. And that's why districts have a chance to opt in or out next year.
Right.
Because of the pressure that has been put on.
Do you already know if we have that opportunity for the coming year? I mean,
No,
we had it
no,
for this
no,
year.
here's what I know is you have it for this year.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, my understanding is in the spring, the Board of Education is going to make a decision as to where they want to, whether they want to stay with MCAS whether they want to go to Park or whether they want to develop a next generation MCAS test.
But when
which-
you say next year, you're referring to the test,
The test for
Is
the
being
next
taken.
school
School
year.
year.
yeah.
Now, we've had 3 years to align to the new standards in our curriculum. And remember, the MCAS test 1 year was just the MCAS standards from the old frameworks. Then it was a combination, and now, last year, it was the full new standards. And that's going forward. So it's just a very ambitious track.
Yes,
And I think that's just, I think we have to be honest about the challenges that faces. So the next thing Julie and I were talking about is just thinking about this major questions, the questions that have been raised to us, sort of clustered into these 5 categories, which we're gonna try to take a stab at quickly. Some questions about the standards themselves, this whole MCAS versus assessment in the Park being an issue. The cost of implementation has been raised. Who gets to make what choice? What do we really get to say yes or no? Forever to whether or not we're going to do the Common Core or whether or not we're going to do the Park. And then the question that people have raised about the student privacy and data collection. So we're going to talk about those. So we'll start with the Common Core standards quickly. All right, so this is really consistent, I think, across both the people who are pro and the people who are, these are factual. It was initiated by the Board of Governors. So one of the questions that gets raised is this from the federal government? And you've read the multiple perspectives on this, and I actually think Jamie Gass did a really nice job at the Board of Selectmen's meeting of really telling the history of how we got to where we are and how it came to be. And, he agreed that it came out of the states and governors, wanting to have some consistency around the education students left high school with so that they could be ready for college and careers. They also got a lot of pressure from business leaders and colleges that students aren't ready. So there is a huge emphasis on college and career readiness. They're in English, language arts, and math. And they are a set of grade level benchmarks and guidelines by grade. The frameworks we used to deal with were by strand. So you might have K to 4 or 3 to 5, and then you had to figure out, in order for your teachers to know what to teach, you had to lay that out and break that out. These are by grade. So actually, people like that, teachers like that, because it gives them a sense of they're responsible at their grade level. I said before, they're embedded in the curriculum frameworks. The thinking was that they were designed to level the playing field, whether they do or not. You know what I mean? That's up for debate and discussion, but that was the intention. And their attempt was also to benchmark them against international standards, because even though Massachusetts students do really, really well, not necessarily does every state. As we talked about last time, some states an 8th grade education, 8th grade reading level will get you a high school diploma. That is not the case in Massachusetts. So a lot of states are really nervous, particularly about Park, because they have a huge gap from where they are to where they need to get their students to be. Massachusetts has been the top in the nation. So a lot of the concern about, have the standards been dummied down, Massachusetts started at a high level, and that's why, we'll talk a little bit about that with you, but it isn't our sense, based on what we know of the standards, that our students are that the standards have changed and have gotten less rigorous. In fact, we will argue that they've gotten more rigorous. And then just the concept of standards are just what students need to know and be able to do. Curriculum is what we do at the local level to put that together. There's no national curriculum. It's just not in place. Whether it would be in the future, I doubt it very much, because I think from what I read and from people I talk to, I think this is being very much driven at the state level. Not to say the federal government's not involved, but the federal government is, I don't think, involved at the level of the actual implementation at the local level.
Well, I believe that would be illegal,
Yes, according to
Yes,
something we read, yes.
1965 Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and in 1970, there was a General Education Provisions Act that outlawed that.
Yes.
That says that's not
Right.
something the federal government can do.
Okay, so here we are. So some people have raised the question about who was involved in the process of, and was there a process for developing the Common Core standards? And this actually comes right from the Department of Education. And it shows, you know, how it progressed from the spring of 2009 to December of 2010, and you can, you know, you can follow the train to see that there was a public comment period. And staff and local educators were encouraged, and I remember being on, you know, receiving it and having the chance to comment on it as well. But I think we just pulled this out because it did show that there was a process. Whether it was a complete enough process, people might disagree with that, but there was a process. And it was done at the state level, initiated by the governor and the commissioner signing a memorandum of understanding. Okay, so now somebody asked the question, do we have to implement the Common Core? The answer to that is yes, as long as it's part of the approved Massachusetts frameworks. So if you take a look, that is the actual law that directs the Commissioner of Education to develop academic standards. And I actually did contact our attorney and asked her specifically this question, you know, does the school committee have the authority to refuse to teach the Common Core standards and or not administer the state test? And her answer was absolutely not. So, you know, I'm not quite, I'm thinking that maybe some of the conversation we're hearing in all the circles is that this year we do have the opportunity to opt into park or out of park. So I think a lot of places have 60% of the districts are doing park, other districts are doing MCAS. So there is in fact a choice this year, which I think is part of the advocacy. Like if we don't do something about it now, and the State Board of Education adopts it park next year, the law is gonna tell us it's the law that you implement the state test that goes with your frameworks that is adopted at the state level. So I think that's why we're hearing a sense of urgency on some people's part to talk about this. So I just wanted to see that it is in the law. Okay, keep going there.
Can I ask a quick
Yeah.
question on that? I know, I mean, Park is ELA and math.
Yes.
That was talking about history and all the others. Is that still,
In the works?
I guess, is it in the works? But in that the other subjects aren't in the Park, what are those standards? Are those just the old existing?
They're
let's say
the
old,
current,
but-
they're the current frameworks.
Okay.
Yeah, they're the current frameworks. Actually, they just have the next generation science standards just came out. And the science test is a graduation requirement in a subtest of the subject. And then their goal was to add the history, and they just had to stop because of, again, the pressure was mounting that enough's enough, we can't do it, and then they were still changing the frameworks, there was still discussion about those kind of things. So that's the law, and so we have to work within the parameters of that. Julie, I want Julie to talk about, some people ask, well, what's the change in the standards? Like, what's the difference? So I want Julie to talk about the next set of slides in terms of the noticeable shifts, so you have a sense of that.
For the last 2 years, we've been looking at these standards and really trying to determine what are the shifts, because it will impact, you know, some of the things that we're doing in the classroom. So when our vertical teams meet, we talk about these things, and one of the first bullet really addresses a noticeable shift in terms of expecting a higher Lexile or reading level for students at their grade level. So it's talking about understanding text complexity, how students read, their grade level reading expectations, what are those, and how can you identify those parameters. The standards talk a lot about writing across the content and genre, and that's where the social studies and science comes into these standards. So this kind of goes along with the second bullet. It's really about organizing writing to support deeper learning, tied to content. So it's not necessarily I'm writing about my day, it's I'm writing about something that I'm reading about in science, or something that we're working on as an experiment, a passage that we're reading in terms of a social studies text or a first-person narrative, and how that would work. And so that's really about, those standards really address deeper and more authentic reading and writing tasks, you know, to put it in that kind of sense. And so that's where the second bullet comes in terms of when I say across content, I mean incorporating that type of reading and writing for a wide variety of content areas. But that doesn't mean that those particular standards were changed in those disciplines. It just means this content is deeper as a result of these shifts, and what we're asking students to be able to do. It talks a lot about 3 modes of writing and how students will be expected to do more writing for personal narrative writing, but also informational writing, persuasive writing, and research writing. And using those genres for writing as a tool for inquiry and collaboration, and building speaking and listening standards into those as well, so that you're not just creating a piece of paper, you're creating a project presentation where you're working together collaboratively or even individually, depending on the assignment. But you're allowed to build in a lot of other standards as well, so that we're fully supporting students. We could create this PowerPoint, but if we didn't know how to present it and share it, what good would it be in that sense if we couldn't discuss it and break it down and try to, understand the different concepts within it? And so those skills are kind of embedded in this process as well. The appendix list is also been created. 3 appendices were created for the Common Core. One was for a reading list by Lexile, so that's the understanding of what are the different types of reading that is considered to be grade level. What does that look like? And that does include the classics. It includes a wide range of what we would consider to be the literary canon and traditional literature, but also trade books and stories and other things as well. Poems, dramatic pieces, things of that nature. There's another appendix for student writing that includes student writing examples that would be considered to be an appropriate expectation for writing in response to some of those readings that students are doing. And there is another appendix that also addresses strictly the research base that was used to coordinate the different set of standards.
And these things are recommended but not required. We might require them in our curriculum guides, in our curriculum maps, but the frameworks don't require that you read every book in there, or you exclude books that you think
Right.
are important.
So, with these appendices, I'm assuming in your grade level meetings, you've had opportunities to discuss these, teachers have seen them?
Yes.
And they've seen these samples of student writing at the different grade levels. How do they respond?
Well, one of the things that we continue to talk about is, so how are we going to embed those kinds of writing tasks? And it's very similar to the prompt that you read at grade 3. How are we going to have our students take on a certain persona in their writing? Or what's the audience that we would want to think about when we're trying to create a unit around informational writing?
So it's more of a, how can I get students to do this, as opposed to, students can do this is too easy, or there's no way 3rd graders could do this. I mean, I'm just trying to get a sense of if I'm a teacher.
How am I
as a teacher,
interpreting
I
this?
saw lots of student writing. So
Right,
this is
right.
abysmal. This person is, at this age level, at this grade level, should have higher level skills than this, or, wow, somebody this age could produce this. So I just wonder,
That's been a
you know,
great
somebody's-
conversation for us. We spent a lot of time looking at student work over the course of the last 2 years in creating our own criteria for what we
Exemplars.
feel
Yes,
is important
absolutely.
for writing and the qualities that we want to see happen.
And how well, but I guess my question is, how well are they aligned with what you're seeing in what is
They're
being
very well
provided?
aligned, but I would say that our teachers are quite demanding when it comes to, this expectation. So I feel like it's helped us kind of, look at the bar that we have and say, is that what we consider to be good writing? And for some teachers, I'll be honest, it's not easy to make that decision.
Yes.
So working with the grade level peers and teachers, and also within a school, understanding what happens with writing across grade levels, and what does it look like when a student writes in social studies versus science versus ELA. And those conversations have been wonderful, because we've been able to really.
The standards are driving us to do that. Right,
And
Julie?
yeah,
I
and
mean-
it's something that we know we need to
But
do,
they're
because we have
essential,
to,
I think,
we have to
educate
create
students, you
that
have to constantly
expectation.
be having those.
Yep.
I mean, I
Right.
sat on many university committees where we, drew people in from
Right.
across the different disciplines to look at student writing and have these kinds of conversations. And there's nothing, I think, better for professional development, for a sense of what am I doing in the classroom, what are my expectations?
And how do
Are
they
they-
match yours?
Yeah.
And how can we help students get beyond,
Never-
you know, the basics when it comes to writing? It's been a great, big conversation. It's not close to being over. It's
No,
something
it
we
will
always
never
work on
end.
and
It
try to
will never end.
refine.
It should never
It will
end.
never
I
end.
think
Right.
it's part of what the profession demands, and I think one of the things that I appreciate about the standards is that it sets a level of professionalism for teachers, that you will engage. Your job is not just what you do with the students in the classroom, it's being engaged as part of a community and having these discussions. And it pleases me, I can't tell you how much, to know that they happen, and I do think they have a positive impact on instruction. And no teacher could know exactly how to elicit any of these things from a student in 1 year of teaching. It's an
Right.
ongoing professional process.
And research comes out along the time that you're doing these things that helps to support the work that you're doing and, you know, enlighten things a bit more. So we certainly look to research with the work that we do.
And one of the things that helps is there's time built into the schedule for it to occur. You know, for example, at the high school, they have departmental time, which is
Absolutely.
scheduled, and it's not their personal
Absolutely.
preparation time. It's time that's designated for the departments to work together.
So
They
it's
have
not like
team
the
time.
state comes to you and says, you must have this many hours of teamwork on your,
No.
in your daily schedule, but they hand you these and they say, okay, now figure out
Figure it
within
out,
your
yeah.
building how you're going to achieve this, and you know that the way to achieve this is to have these professional conversations amongst teachers and teaching staff, and you create those. I think it's brilliant.
Well, it's not just time, it's the expectation of what happens with the time.
Absolutely.
And it's the commitment the teachers have to using the time to this end.
Absolutely.
Because we do have grade level time at the elementary level, and we do have
Teachers always
team
ask
time.
for more.
And they ask for more.
I'm telling
They
you,
do.
if we could give
Sure.
them one big gift, it would be time.
Time.
What's,
Never enough of it.
oh, did you want?
Well, you know, I'm not a teacher by profession or anything, so I don't know if this question is gonna sound ignorant, but, I'm just wondering, in these standards, you and I have we've discussed that the new standards place a greater emphasis on writing skills, and there's been, you know, for several years, you know, we're teaching writing in greater depth at all different levels. What I'm reading here, it sounds like developing the student's voice and their ability to feel comfortable, you know, with creating a narrative or in their head, or, you know, thinking about how they would persuade somebody in an argument and getting that voice down on paper. I'm wondering about grammar, and do you see, are there enough grammatical standard,
Yes,
you know,
I can tell
grammatical
you.
requirements in these new standards? Cause
Two
you know, I've got
things.
one child whose voice is beautiful, but his grammar needs help. And I've got another child whose grammar is not bad, but, you know, getting the ideas out, he has trouble with that, and
So
I've
I
just-
think that's
it
certainly one
grammar?
of the things that we talk about. And in my experience, someone told me a long time ago, you could never teach voice. And so that's a question that's always been in my mind. Can you teach a student how to develop voice?
Mhm.
And I'm not convinced that that's true, because
But you
I
can,
feel
but
like
you
the
can.
more comfortable you are with the ability to write, the more you bring your persona to the writing, whatever it may be,
Yes.
whether it's narrative, informational, research, it doesn't matter. But the more comfortable you are with the process of writing,
Mhm.
the more capacity you have to develop that voice. And that's our job, is to determine how can we ensure that those skills and concepts that we're teaching ensure that basic, so that our kids can develop voice and work within that. And we also have standards for grammar. One of the things that we noticed through our analysis of these standards was the fact that we really did need to take a look at how the grammatical structure, the teaching of grammar at the elementary school was being done. So our vertical team came up with a K-12 grammar guide that we use in the district to help us
And it
support.
showed in our MCAS results that our grammar
Right.
scores were not as high.
Right, they were just places where
So
we
it
we
actually
just,
showed that
we really
there was a
had to say,
deficiency.
okay, let's really take a look at this and figure out what that is. And when you talk to teachers, you would see that, you know, because the standards, the way they were written before, weren't extremely clear when it came to the teaching of grammar, we weren't necessarily sure how strong we were in each grade level in terms of that skill. So those
do you
two
think that
things
newer
are-
standards have been
I do.
improved in
In
the area
grammar.
of clarifying what grammar? needs to be taught when.
But we also had to take a look at those standards and then determine, okay, so let's take a look at this in a K-12 trajectory and determine what's a rational expectation for a grade level.
Right.
And work within those expectations as well, so.
Okay.
We do a lot of looking through the International Reading Association, writing research, reading research, and try to determine how those things factor into that decision-making as well.
Okay, great.
It doesn't just come from one place.
What about, and I realize we're asking 100 questions
That's
and you're trying to
okay.
get through.
No, this is fine.
And this might be a question for Vanessa and to sort of put her on the spot, but how different is the student experience? Do they
feel like
is
it's all
is there-
different?
Yeah, do they even realize that there's a change? And I'm talking about you in the third person, I'm sorry. But like, is the classroom any different than it was 2 years ago, or is it all kind of behind the scenes?
I mean, in terms of the content,
Structural.
how
In
the
terms of-
curriculum has changed?
In terms of content, in terms of delivery, in terms of,
Well, a fourth grader today has no other experience of fourth grade, so it is just what it is.
True.
They don't have an expectation going into fourth grade, oh, I'm gonna do, or a third, at any grade, right?
well,
A
yeah, so the
student doesn't
individual
know.
student, but would the 12th grader today notice anything different than the 12th grader 2 years ago or 3 years ago in terms of the experience?
I know, like, when you're talking about grammar, honestly, like, last year my English class was awesome. I probably learned the most grammar that I've learned in my whole high school career. Like, they really focused on that, and I, like, saw my writing ability improve, where in the past I haven't had to focus on that as much as I had. So it's definitely, like, you see it coming in, like, maybe slow steps at a time.
Mhm.
So it's not this major overwhelming shift that
It's
you're
not like,
feeling.
here's all this work. It's
Here's all
more
this new
like,
stuff.
here you get to gradually, like, see it grow.
Right.
I don't know if Pam has seen a difference, because your kids are about the same as mine. But I've seen a difference in what my current 8th grader brings home now versus my son who's in 10th grade, what he brought home when he was in 8th grade. And I just see the difference in the writing, and I know I've mentioned that to you before, because we did get complaints.
Yes, we did.
People were hearing, people were telling us that the writing just isn't there. And I have seen a huge difference in that. Like when my daughter comes home and she's like, I have to do this again. And she, she's not getting it that the teacher just knows that she's capable of it. And she just, 4 times she sent it back, take it home, redo, not even redo it. Just make little additives on it or whatever. And I just think it's definitely changing. I can see it as a parent.
The process of editing, and that's a critical
Yeah.
process to quality writing,
Right.
is, to be able to do that.
And we have to teach that too,
Effectively.
how to edit appropriately, not
Right.
just edit for
Right.
Many
grammar.
people
Don't just go
make
in and fix all your
livings in their
capitals,
adult
but how
lives
do you
as
edit for
editors,
content
editing the works
as well?
of other adults who
That's right.
never master that. I mean, it is.
I'm never satisfied with the things that I write, honestly. I mean, you get to the end because you have to, but I'm truly never satisfied. So I would hope that, our students are feeling good about revision and not being too worried about not being right the first time, because we have to get over that too. Not having it perfect the first time. Okay, so noticeable shifts in the mathematics standards. What you'll certainly see if you were to open up the standards right now is a very clear critical area section within the standards that identifies the expected learning at each grade level. And that was not always the case in the mathematics standards. We didn't have critical areas clearly defined. And so when you're a teacher and you're opening up a wide book of standards, you're trying to figure out what's important, what do I teach, how do I organize? And so one of the things that we do like, and especially the math vertical team is very happy with, the critical areas and the coordination of that effort to make it clear for teachers. Here's what is important, or here's what we've defined as focus areas for certain grade levels. And so the vertical team was pleased with that. How the mathematics connects within and across grade levels rather than 5 strands. So there are domains and clusters that are across every grade level instead of perhaps a standard that you only see in one particular grade level. Geometry is broken throughout the different grades instead of saying, well, we only teach geometry in 5th grade. That's the only time they get it until they get to high school. You're nodding? You agree with that? Yeah. So it's definitely something that's more centrally located within each grade level. There's a focus on college and career readiness that emphasizes the skills and knowledge needed for success beyond high school. And they do give us different pathways and trajectories that you could possibly choose from at the high school. We chose the traditional method or traditional organization of coursework because it works for us. Our students do well with that trajectory. So we didn't have to make major changes in terms of course structure, whereas I think other places may have had to. But they have the option to do that. We
And
chose.
sometimes they teach in a more integrated fashion, sometimes they teach in a more traditional course structure, which is where we
Right.
went.
They include the National Council of Teachers of Math, Standards for Mathematical Practice, which I won't obviously read all that to you. But it's also inclusive of that is the National Research Council's report on adding it up and how we can use all of these different types of reasoning and competencies and strategies, conceptual understandings. Those practices can be embedded within the teaching of math as well. So it's not just here's the math problem of the day, do it, and let's hope you get it right. It's really about teaching perseverance and work throughout the concepts and the operations so that our students are developing a more fluent experience in
Tilly,
math.
can you speak a little to the Algebra 1 question
Yeah.
and the calculus question? How do you know that?
So that might be in here, but
Okay, yeah,
that kind
great,
of comes
perfect
into
segue.
how are we making these shifts? Like we have to make decisions at each school in terms of like the high school especially. What are the math requirements going to be based on standards? Because this is a graduation requirement. Our kids applying to colleges. We want to make sure that they have a full experience. And so I'll speak to that in a minute. But one of the things that I wanted to be able to talk about tonight was how are we making these shifts? We're making them in so many different conversations. We're having conversations at every level is what I'm trying to say. We are operating district vertical teams. We're talking at grade levels. We're talking at departments. We're talking at faculty meetings. We're talking at professional development. Every opportunity we have, we talk about what we do all day. We teach. How do we do it? What are the best strategies that we can do, and how can we incorporate the standards that are being asked of us to do this type of work? And this is when I tell you, teachers always ask for time. This is the time that they want. I want to be able to talk to my grade level team about the work that we're doing and how it's working for the teachers. Just like Amanda said, when teachers want to go into other teachers' classrooms, this is instructional rounds, you know, in a different perspective. It's about talking about the work. So we make the shifts throughout our conversations with all the people that are involved. We ensure that our core standards meet and exceed the standards. We don't do just what's in this book. We do that and a lot more. Because this, you know, you don't want to be limited to one particular place or one particular thought process. You want to be able to build in, like I say, research, things that go beyond the standards. What are the national councils saying? What are the research bodies saying? What's best practice look like within this content, and how can we make that our goal and our aim? And so we do incorporate many things as opposed to perhaps just that flat line of here are your standards, now go and do. We engage our teachers in the analysis of units, lessons, trajectories. All the work that's being done is done through this collaborative method. It's certainly not something that we buy, you know, and do that kind of thing. So let me get to the trajectory just for a minute for math. Not every high school has a 4-year math requirement, but Georgetown does. And so back in the day, this big push by the Department of Ed was a Mass Core expectation. I worked in a district that did not have Mass Core expectations. And I came here and I remember talking to Peter about it one day and I said, you know, you automatically have these like Mass Core things just built in your program of studies. And he said, of course we do. It was just funny because that's not really the experience I had in other places. So it was great. And I was happy that that was the expectation. It's always been there. It's not new. It's not just fabricated. And we have a 4-year requirement for ELA, and all of these go through AP coursework. So that is, you know, we also have other capacities as well to support the 4-year requirement, not just AP.
Part of our 4-year math requirement was driven by the state's EPP process. You had to pass MCAS with a proficient score, not just a passing score. So students who in 10th grade didn't earn that level of score had to take additional math, and then they could earn their graduation diploma by doing that and increasing their score. So the 4-year math requirement was prior to the change in the Common Core standards. It was something that we had worked on as a result of a prior state initiative.
I know that one of the questions was what happens to Algebra 1 at the middle school level with the new standards. We have Algebra 1. We continue to have algebra within 8th grade math. We've updated our standards and our units and our trajectories to support the addition of other standards that are expected now in grade 8 that weren't necessarily so prolifically obvious. But we do have the capacity to offer that in addition to the way that we structure the units that we know we need to teach based on some of the additions to those standards.
They've moved some of the expectations from 8th grade algebra down to 7th grade. So that their expectation is that if everybody does what they need to do in K through 7, they'll be able to take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. There will be some kids who will not be able to take it in 8th grade. That's what happens now. We do it over a 2-year period. And those students generally get through Algebra 2. So they do algebra, geometry, and Algebra 2. But the kids who want to go to the advanced levels, they're taking, that Algebra 1 in 8th grade and will continue to do that.
So the biggest shifts that we can really determine through the 8th grade math is the proportions and ratios, units and conversions, geometry, trigonometry, some of those standards that we wanted to make sure that we built in and got that into the curriculum as well. So I hope that answers I know there are a lot of questions, more may come up, but I
Yeah, and we
wanted
could
to be
have
able
a
to.
math department chair, Paula Elder, could come
She
and
would
talk
love to
about
come
it a
and
little
talk
bit
to
more.
you. She would love that. All of our department heads
Love to talk
love
about
their
their subject.
contents,
Yeah.
and they're so happy to talk about them. So the other questions that we had raised were, do the standards define how teachers teach? And the answer is no. Districts, schools, and teachers decide how to teach these standards. There is no mechanism for this push down in terms of here, now this is how you're going to do it, and this is what it should look like. We have the capacity to create, and that's what teaching is. It's about creation and being able to do that kind of work. And so you would hear a lot of complaining if teachers didn't have the capacity to create, because that's part of the work that we do. Teachers use differentiated methods to support all students in their learning. And that it looks different with each teacher. You may differentiate one way, I may differentiate another, but we're offering teachers teachers the capacity to differentiate. Our standards are established. Do you want to let Vanessa go home? Vanessa, we
Give
love
her
having
that
you because you can help us answer
what you're trying to say?
giving the
Home?
student
Giving her the
perspective.
opportunity
Oh.
if she,
Yes.
Make sure you know that you can.
because it does get late.
Anytime.
But we
Don't
love
use
having
that
you
homework.
here.
Actually, we might want her to participate.
Well, it's nice to hear her perspective, actually, but don't feel like you have to stay. Standards establish what students need to learn, but not how our teachers are required to teach that.
And, that could vary district to district. It just isn't the case here. It's how we
Right.
choose to
You're right.
have our operation work.
There are some
There may
districts
be
who are a
some
little bit
districts that are a little more directive and a
top-down
little
and
more
directive.
top-down. That, it could happen.
Right. Okay, so I wanted to give you, and I will not read
More
this all
quick
to you.
standard slides.
Just a couple quick slides on standards. The ELA standards that were going through the 4th round of rendition when the Common Core standards were in the world and, at that moment, we were already realigning and rewriting the Massachusetts standards. That actually came to a stop because they knew these other standards had a capacity. I didn't know this, but someone knew that Common Core standards were a possibility, and so Massachusetts stopped the work to try to make sense of what this work was that was being done at the national level. 2001 and 2004 were the most notable changes to the ELA mass framework. So when Carol tells you that they were publishing grade bands, I can tell you I spent hours of my life trying to figure out who
I was a
teaches
curriculum director
roots
at the
in the
time, so,
7th
yeah.
grade versus who teaches suffixes and prefixes
Right.
in what grade.
Right.
Hours and hours of my life have been spent doing those things. And any other teacher that's sitting behind me will probably be nodding their heads because they've done it too.
Yeah.
And so the one thing that happens with the new standards is they do come out in grade level bands, but our teachers felt pretty happy with that because it was defined finally. We don't have to spend the time trying to figure that out. At least we have this sense or this guideline as to what, you know, that would look like. But I wanted to show you how the language doesn't really change. In 2001 and 2004, Math Grade Standard 3 for informational reading asked students to identify, and I'm looking at the middle column, identify and use knowledge of common graphic features. For example, charts, graphs, maps, diagrams, and illustrations. Now, it might surprise you that that's in an ELA framework, has been since 2001. In 2011, similar wording applies. Use information gained from illustrations, examples, maps, photographs, and the words in a text to determine understanding of a text, where, when, why, and how key events occur. And so they built in more, like a little bit of a shift in terms of the language when it comes to demonstrate understanding from the text that you're using, whatever that text may be, how you can identify those graphic features. Distinguish cause and effect was another standard in 2001 and 2004. And identify and use knowledge of common organizational structures, i.e. chronological order. So if you look at the standard on the left, the second bullet in 2011, describe the logical connection between particular sentences. So now we're looking at specific writing. And paragraphs in a text. For example, comparisons, cause and effect for a second and third person in sequence. So it's really a shift in the language, but not truly in the expectation. And that's, you know, we feel comfortable with that. So when we were trying to talk about, well, okay, so what gets to be determined by the teacher if this is your standard that you're working on? You get to decide as a teacher, what are your groups going to look like if you're doing some kind of informational integration knowledge of ideas? How are your students going to be sharing a reading routine? What will this be, whole group responding to reading and writing? I'm sorry, that's tiny. Excuse me, I'm still getting over my cold from last week. What kind of performance task, what are we going to ask these kids to be able to do to show us that they've understood that they can describe logical connections in sentences and paragraphs? What's the lesson format going to be? What activities should the students do? What materials do I use? How do I differentiate? Those are all things that is still determined by the teacher using a standard such as that. I didn't go through the same thing with math, but I wanted to show you an example of a change in the mathematic frameworks for grade 4. On the left are the former frameworks. Identify and generate equivalent forms of common decimals and fractions less than one whole. The new frameworks give more context to what that means. Explain why a fraction, AB, is equivalent to the fraction, and you can read this, n times a over n times b by using visual fraction models. So it's talking about how can we visually show students what fractions are as opposed to identify a fraction. With attention to how the number and size of the two parts differ, even though the two fractions themselves are the same size, and then use this principle to recognize and generate equivalent fractions. So it's understand the concept, but let's practice the work and look at the visualization techniques that we can use to bring math more in focus for students. So the language is dense, I'm not going to lie to you. But it's asking for like a shift, as the ELA did. What is the shift in the expectation, and how can we coordinate to support students with that?
Great.
Okay. I know I can talk all night.
Okay,
I'll try
so
not to.
the second sort of cluster of questions
Very
had to do
interesting,
with
thank you.
testing.
Keep going.
Right, so we just pulled this from the state law. This is obviously the state law regarding MCAS. But I think this will have, if they adopt PARC or they go with a different MCAS test, this will probably have to change. But the reason we draw this together is that it's part of the expectation that districts have to administer the state test. Good news is we had a choice this year. We chose MCAS for, I think, very good reasons. And I think there's gonna be a lot learned from the districts that pilot PARC this year. And I think it will be very influential ultimately in what the Board of Ed decides. If it doesn't go well, and all of a sudden districts start saying this is not a good thing, the pressure's gonna be on to go in some hybrid model. I don't think we're gonna, I've said it before, I believe it, I don't think you're gonna see MCAS continue in its current form. I think you're gonna see a form of MCAS that looks more like PARC, if it's not PARC itself. So I think there's definitely gonna be some changes to the MCAS, even if
the state stays with MCAS.
I am interested to see the communities that did go with Park and see their
What their
comparison.
experience is, I
Yeah.
am too, yeah, I'm very
Yes,
interested in that.
yeah, we'll definitely,
And
that's
just
something
to
we'll bring
see
up.
if, because the things that I've read is that they're gonna see a significant change.
Well, I think the
in their
interesting
testing.
thing, it's going to be interesting, Barbie, because remember, the incentives they provided to districts
Right.
as to whether they take the park or not is it's a hold harmless provision. And they're saying they have some type of software program that will allow there to be somewhat of an equivalency, you know, determined between the two tests. I'm not so sure how that's gonna look, but that's what they're saying. So if you went with Park, you had this hold harmless provision. In other words, it couldn't hurt you. If your scores, and I think Michael asked me a question, you know, if our kids took the Park today and it counted, you know, how would our kids fare in relationship to how they do on MCAS? I think that our students would struggle more because we have not really had sufficient time to change the way the instruction aligns with the test. I think the expectations for the test are different. We gave the example the last time of, you know, MCAS is tricky, is difficult. You read a passage, you answer questions. They're not the literal questions that maybe we did years ago, maybe when I went to school. They're more inferential, more, you know, more, they're more meaty. However, Park is gonna ask you, as you see here, to read multiple selections and then draw from those selections, not just the details to answer questions, but to use that information to then synthesize, analyze, and evaluate. And our students may struggle more with that because it's higher level skills.
It is a higher level skill, but I would also just, my reaction when I read that article and I saw that sample Park test, and is that if you have a third grader who's never seen a school newspaper and they have a question on a test that says write an article for a school newspaper, they're gonna be like, I don't even know what a school newspaper, I mean, let alone do that kind of analysis. So you have to be able to, people worry about teaching to the test. Teaching to the test is just making sure like that cultural knowledge is there.
Right.
That if you're gonna ask a student to write something for their school newspaper, you better make sure they've seen a school newspaper and know what that is. And those kinds of examples, and I think that's what, there's this, when we don't get down into those kinds of details and you're just talking about it conceptually, it's hard to understand. Well, of course, you know, maybe you want a student to be able to do this kind of comparison or critical thinking of text, and I happen to think we do a lot of that in our schools. The question is, would it transfer?
Right.
Do our kids in third grade they've never written an article for a school newspaper, so that I could see as hanging them up more than anything,
And
more than what we
saw
are
with a lot
looking
of the
for.
questions that we looked at for for Park, is that they're sort of layered. So
Yes.
if you don't know the answer to part A, you're kind of sunk for part B, C, and D.
Or you're questioning your judgment when it comes to open multiple choice in terms
And
of,
at that
it's not just
grade
A, B,
level,
C, or
those
D,
kids are
it's
so
A
literal
and
that
E
if
and
they get
F
stuck
and
right on that,
G.
what's a school newspaper article look like, they can't
Right.
even go to the next step.
So it may not be all bad, and a lot of it our students have been exposed to. But I think even Vanessa, if we put her on the spot, when she first started taking MCAS to where she's taking it now, there's probably a greater comfort with it. There's more alignment with the way you're being taught, and that's the goal. That was the goal, was to give MCAS enough time
Sure.
to make sure it was aligned with the standards, and for teachers to understand the kind of question formats and the kind of question rigor that was being asked, and make sure that when you were asking questions in class, you were asking multi-step questions,
Yes.
not just one question at a time. And we have had years to master that. So
Yes.
it's understandable that, at least in the initial phases of implementing a new testing system, there's gonna need to be some
Absolutely.
calibration. There's no
Absolutely.
doubt about that. Okay, so let's keep going, Julie, quickly here. Oops, yikes. Okay, so this is just, somebody asked me, you know, what is really the difference? So this is just a summary, and we will post the PowerPoints and all the articles and things on Julie's curriculum website for anybody who's interested.
That'd be super.
And, so basically, I don't think we need to spend more time on that. You
Those are the
have that, those are
differences
the differences.
we just discussed.
So how do we implement the Common Core? Do we have to implement the Common Core test? So, you know, as you've been reading things, you know that Race to the Top states, you know, had to choose from 2 assessments, so they're looking at Park and Smarter Balance. And then actually, I think I included an article in here of a state that was using the ACT. People who published the ACT were looking at that as a measure of college and career readiness, so.
That was very interesting.
Yeah, you know, again, you find out all this stuff when you start looking at it a little bit more. Massachusetts is in year 2. I told you that was delayed from the original timeline because of the pressure that was being put on from organizations throughout the state. And you know, we chose MCAS, so that's great. And the Board of Ed is going to decide whether or not to adopt Park in 2015. So I think that's why groups are organizing, trying to ensure that, you know, they just don't want to see that railroaded in. There's want to have a careful and deliberate decision that's in the best interest of our children. But by law, if that test is selected in 2015, it will need to be administered to all students in grades 3 to 8 in the Commonwealth, and there's possible additions to testing that could include testing kindergarten through grade 2 students and adding 9 and 11. That's the prediction. Hey, Julie? Okay, questions of cost quickly. So there were sort of 3 areas that were identified in terms of what costs might be. One is technology. So just for the people that are watching, you know, the question is, do we have Park-ready computers? We had to do this analysis 2 years ago, and yes, we do. However, in order to administer the test within the testing windows, because you know, if we use the high school, for example, we have eight labs, but we would have to cancel all of our classes in order to run people through those labs. But the lab computers would meet the requirements that have been laid out by the people from the state. The new building project at Pembroke will outfit students. There'll be sufficient computers if we were needed to administer a technology-based test. That's not the reason we're getting the computers. Obviously, it's for instructional purposes, but if the question is, if we had to give this test, would we end up having to have a huge outlay of money in order to administer it? And the answer to that is no. But we do have a technology plan, as you know, and the goal is to continue to look at the middle high school, because Pembroke, the building project will do a beautiful job with Pembroke, and we're using a lot of the equipment that we have that's less than 3 years old in the new plan. The high school, through lots of sources, has upgraded all their labs. There are some portable labs there, and the teachers, as you know, this year got new computers for their purposes, and then the next step is to figure out what we're doing for students at the middle high school. Then we will pretty much have our long-term plan realized until they become obsolete. But, you know.
Just to comment on technology, I think a lot of what I was reading is, you know, we're gonna have to go out and buy 500 new computers or whatever that is to be able to do it. And the expectation of the cost, but I thought what was missing in most of those arguments was the fact that we also had those computers. A, we had a lot of them in-house already,
Right.
and B, we weren't taking the computers out of the box to take the test
No.
and then closing them and putting them back in the box. We're getting a year's worth of use out of those computers,
Absolutely.
but for those certain days, obviously, they're used for the test. So I think
Right.
some of the arguments of the costs are a little.
And we use computers to do our math testing. I mean, it's not the only kind of
Right.
And
testing.
our
that-
teachers use technology all the time, and, you know, certainly would embed much, much more if they had the capacity for it.
But I think there was a concern about it, you know, and I'm not saying we wouldn't continue to want to add computers, but that wouldn't be because of the test. It would be
Right.
because it's part of our long-range strategic plan. And I think just the other thing to note, and again, I mentioned it before, paper and pencil tests on Park, they may get so much pressure that the technology isn't the way to administer the test, and that's a kind of a modification they make, but we don't know that yet.
So if they do charge for that pencil and paper, so what would we have to put it in?
It's usually a per
budget?
student, yeah.
It would be a budget?
Yeah.
Oh, so it would be a per
Per
student?
student use. Okay. The second question people raised was, you know, well, would there need to be a lot of money in professional development and training? And so Julie has listed a couple of things here that we've done as a matter of our district plan for focus area 2, which is obviously curriculum, instruction, and assessment. So a lot of these things that we've already done fit nicely into the new standards and the prepping our kids and teachers for the adjustment to the new standards. And as you know, we purchased Atlas, so that's helping us with our curriculum mapping and alignment efforts to make it more automatic as opposed to, and standardized as opposed to everybody having to do it individually. And we obviously have ongoing training in our strategic plan based on our strategic initiatives all the time. So we don't see ourselves having to do additional professional development specific to the Common Core standards, but the professional development we're doing is always about how can we improve our teaching, and that, so the things are related. Okay, and finally, focus area, this area 3, some people had raised questions about the textbooks. So we've listed here some of the things, again, over the course of the last several years as part of our strategic alignment that we have actually purchased with grants and our budget. And our estimate is that 80% of our books and materials we're currently using are appropriate to teach these math frameworks as they currently exist. And just a note that, again, the textbooks are a tool. They should not be the only resource. And you know, textbook companies get smart. They'll start stamping, you know, Common Core on them, or they'll start stamping consistent with the Massachusetts frameworks. And somehow, you know, there are places that just buy that. We don't have any such textbooks like that, and that isn't our intention to, you know, just because it says Common Core, it mean that, you know, we're necessarily going to pick that as a book that's going to be, you know, appropriate for our needs. Privacy concerns. This is something I personally want to learn more about. I was talking to a superintendent colleague of mine recently who actually now works in New Hampshire, and they're adopting Smarter Balance. And this is a question nationally. It's not just, you know, people who might be looking at Park. And he said that Smarter Balance had come and done a presentation that basically said that they're aware of the concern and that they're making adjustments to, you know, reassure people that this isn't the intention, nor can it happen. I just wanted to call your attention to one of these documents we got. Basically says that that they have an actual, that link is actually a link to the actual practice that, you know, the policies that they use that, you know, they say will prohibit some of the fears and concerns. But as I said, I don't know enough about it I'm just giving you information as to what I found out about it based on the question that was asked. You know, question, how much has Common Core changed our lives? I have to say, our lives changed dramatically in the 1990s when No Child Left Behind came in. Because that was about standards and accountability measures and expectations. So all of the core subjects have undergone changes since then. I mean, we just feel like we're constantly changing and adjusting our curriculum. There's not a year that there isn't some new adjustments that we have to make. And in the last 4 years since the adoption of Common Core, we feel like our curriculum's changed about almost 20%. You know, we had a lot of because the Massachusetts frameworks, remember, were high. They were high level anyway, and they were used, you know, as one of the models. So we didn't notice, we told you the shifts we noticed, but we didn't notice a wholesale, you know, overview of what we had to cover. And it's only one of the many initiatives that we were required to do. So if you take a look at this, the last bullet, as early as 1999, when you're talking about shifts in education, this is what we've been dealing with. High-stakes testing, school choice, charter schools, educator evaluation, retail, certification mandates, MTELs, elimination of tenure, accountability. I could go on and on. In fact, this is remember you saw this earlier in the year, I think?
These are our initiatives.
We got this from the state. This is all of
This is what we're doing.
This is what the state calls the work. So all of these little things are not of equal value. But I have to tell you, that's what's been going on since 1999. So while I'm not going to say that if we do Park or the new standards aren't going to continue to cause changes, I think part of the reason why they didn't end up being something that we were as concerned about is because it's one thing inconsistently with what we've been doing all along. So we appreciate that it was brought to our attention that there are people who are concerned and worried about it, and we certainly didn't want anybody to think it was an oversight. You know, we've been aligning curriculum to the standards for 4 years. So it's, I think
Or
the
even longer
urgency.
if you wanna talk about NCLB.
I think the
and
urgency
those
was,
changes.
I think is more about the park. That's how I'm seeing it, and I understand that urgency, because
We
I've
feel
told
it
you what the
too.
questions
Yeah,
are.
we
We
talked
feel
about
it
it. I
too.
mean, it's been-
But
yeah.
that's the work. And then, Julie, what's next, Julie? If anybody, I told you we'll post these, if anybody wants to find more information out, here are some good sites. And then finally, questions and discussion.
I know, I appreciate the parents that did come out tonight.
Yes,
I know a couple
absolutely.
had to leave because it was getting late. But you've spent the time listening. Does anybody have any questions that you wanna talk to us about or have answered, or just even your concerns?
Mhm.
Leah, no?
Poor Leah.
This was really informative. I didn't know as much about these tests. Now, my daughter had to take the park last year just as a
Pilot.
pilot, so do I get the score?
No, that was just testing the questions.
That's one of our little issues there with the park. We had to implement a pilot, from the state, but we didn't receive any student data and won't. And so, you know, that was one of the concerns that we had is what will the data look like? What will the response be from the state and how will it look? Because it would have been helpful for us to learn about how they'll be reporting it, but they're not reporting it to us, unfortunately.
They were really testing the questions.
They were.
They really wanted to see how different questions, worked
For
in a
students.
variety of different
At different grade levels.
locations and settings, yeah.
Does the park have like an essay component to it?
The park has right now, from what we were able to tell from our practice or our pilot of it, it has 2 sessions purportedly throughout the year. One is a performance-based assessment, which is a mid-year assessment, and one is an EOY or an end-of-year assessment. And so, from what I'm hearing, but it's not what I know, the mid-year would have the writing assignments embedded in it, not the end of year, because it takes so long for them to score. Scoring writing is a huge process. It's this massive undertaking. And so they wanted to, from what I'm gathering in my little world, they want to offer that at a mid-year so that they'll have time to get scores to districts by the end of the school year. So it's not, how the students get a long comp now, grades 4, 7, and 10,
Right,
a long
right.
composition for writing. And it takes them forever to get the scores through that. That's why they wanted to move it up into January or whatever, time of year they decide to give it,
Right.
if they do that. But that's my understanding of it.
The students who are taking it this year, though, Leah, are gonna get results.
Yeah, our
Families
students
and
now are
districts will
taking
get
MCAS
results.
like they typically do. Right now, they're taking MCAS. It'll be the exact process that we've had in the past.
And then, they'll take park, or they won't, what are you gonna take
They're
them out,
this year.
MCAS, but not park?
Not park this year.
We're taking MCAS, no park.
Okay.
I know, it's confusing because
It
there's
was
a
a
lot
choice.
of,
I-
a lot of
I
things
just couldn't
that
figure it out.
that were brought up last year with that park pilot and.
But it's very challenging because it's very different to take a test online.
Yes, we agree.
And-
Believe me,
Yeah,
I
but I
know.
think that's where everybody's going, because I have a kid in a private school and everything's on an iPad, from tests to how the way they do instruction. And then if they go to college, I took an online degree and I took a regular degree,
There is a
it's
difference.
skill.
It's a skill. And that's
Definitely.
one of the things I talk about. Margaret and I are very interested in research of the brain, and how the brain works and how writing works and how students, how do you respond as a reader when you're reading paper and you can write on it and do that kind of analysis and then write, versus how do you read online and then how do you write
I think
in
there's
that
been
different
some
type of
research that's
context.
recently come out. It seems to me that I've seen a few things.
There
not
are
that I've
some
read it, but there's
reports
some-
that are currently coming
Yeah,
out
but-
in research about that.
Yeah.
But it's really about the systematic nature in which we read and write and how it works for different people. And so that's
It
definitely.
could be like if you ask, my husband will say, go read this article, and he'll email it to me. I said, no, you need to print it out for me. Because I need to highlight.
That's why Peter says his budget at the high school is so high for me, because I print everything. Because I do, and I do print it and read it, and then I try to reorganize and go from there. But that's the type of learner that I am, and I share your pain. I do, because I'm not just a
And the
reader
trees
of.
do too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm the same way. I like to print things
But
out.
everyone is
highlight.
different,
I
and
do
so it's
too.
really looking at how does that, what could the structure be for that? It's really going to be interesting.
And then that might be one of the things that they look at and get feedback on, and maybe determine paper and pencil is, and should be an option. For that reason, because, you want to know what the child really knows, not
I don't
whether or
want,
not
but
they
I
can
don't
use the
want people
technology.
worrying about the typing, the time it takes to type it on
Yeah.
top of it. So that's another thing I'm thinking about, how students write, and then how students write knowing they have to type it right after. What would that look like? That's a question that I have.
I mean, students may be very different learners than we are because they've grown up with so
Absolutely,
much more
absolutely.
technology
Yep.
or different technology than we did.
That was
What
actually.
do you think, Vanessa? You're still here.
I'm actually on the Northeast Regional Student Advisory Council, and we talked about Park as like an option for something that we could do for the year to
Oh,
work
great.
with. And I know that one of the issues that was brought up was for the math part of the Park exam. You need to show your work in a certain box on, and like I know personally for me I don't know where a lot of the numbered like parts are on the keyboard. So like that would be probably one of the issues for me. But I'm like the same as you guys. I like to print stuff out and kind of like highlight it. Like that's what type of person I am too. So I would feel the same way on
Would you
that.
feel pressure to do it all, organize it, write it, and then type it?
Plus it's timed, like MCAS
Yes,
wasn't
yes.
timed, you had all day
Park
to
is
go
timed,
through.
that's right.
Right.
But that's very different.
Yeah, that is very.
I think that's great that the students, are
I do
taking a look
too.
at it
That's
and,
really great, but we didn't know
maybe
that. That's
having an
excellent.
advocacy on one way or the other, that's great.
You can weigh in on our conversations.
That's great.
That's why I stayed.
That's
I was
awesome.
listening to it.
I'm glad that you did.
Although the interesting thing, to Pam's point, is that when the state administered Park last year, they actually surveyed students, and a high number of students, according to what they reported, said that they preferred taking the test on the computer. So, like,
And
that's to your
certain-
point, that sometimes there's a comfort level, but it does make you think we may have to do training. I mean, our kids take technology classes, but not necessarily on the keyboard and.
right.
Like we did.
But I,
But I mean, my son has difficulty writing, so
Yeah.
he
So that
Some
might
students,
help him.
for some
to
students,
write-
it's a preference.
type
Yeah.
an essay. He
Absolutely.
wouldn't write it
It should
out
be a
and then
choice.
type it. He would just create the whole thing on
Right.
the
I do, I think
screen.
it should be. a
But
choice.
math is something different too.
Yeah,
It's-
showing your work is a little weird. Like I have to write it out. I want to be a math teacher, and I'm like still takes me a little bit.
There you
Well,
go.
that's good
There you
news. That's
go.
great.
Other,
I wanted to find out how do the teachers feel about Common Core, like generally, because teachers I've spoken to, first of all, look shocked that I'm even asking about Common Core. Like, I feel like I'm the only parent that even knows that it exists, and then I'm getting like a positive feel here, but I'm just curious, there's a lot of teachers, there's teachers that have been there many, many years.
Yeah.
I mean, some must have issues, but I don't feel like anyone's really saying,
but the,
speaking of what they are with
No, I hate
parents,
to put
and
you
I'm
on the
sure
spot.
they're
Mike on
saying
the
them
spot, but maybe you could-
house.
We do have a teacher in the audience. Mr. Murphy, how do you feel?
an English teacher.
And what do your colleagues think as well? You don't have to say if you
Yeah,
don't.
I think you're accurate. I think there's a range of reactions. I think that, common assessments, when MCAS was first rolled out, there was some resistance, but I think people have kind of taken to it and accepted it, and there have been some positive results. Part of it is just kind of, it's dealing with a paradigm shift. I mean, there's good and bad in everything. I grew up in New York State. Their Regents exams,
Yeah.
there were state tests that were required at multiple levels, multiple years. It was kind of ingrained in the culture. It's what we did. So when I moved up here and people were talking about MCAS and it was like the sky was falling, it was kind of surprising. Listen, with Park, are there going to be issues? Absolutely. I'm sure that there are a number of teachers that are probably thinking, listen, MCAS is working, we're having success, we're able to monitor student performance and gauge success, so if it's not broken, why fix it? You know, I'm sure that there's some people who are cynics, and you know, rightly so, to say, listen, it's a new testing system. In some ways, there are people who kind of take advantage of the business of education, and it's a cash cow. You know, ultimately, I think we're all interested in one thing: it's what's best for students. So, you know, if it's a state mandate, you know, we'll kind of roll with it and try to take the positive things out of it. And similar to the presentation that Dr. DeRoche had, you know, I think it's a matter of identifying what we already do and just keep doing those things well, and then identify the things where maybe we have to improve in certain areas. There's definitely a range. It's not like everyone's, you know, hook, line, and sinker. You know, hey, let's take it. I mean, there are clearly you know, some issues you mentioned in the previous meeting, and we have to talk about these things. We don't want to bury our heads in the sand and be ignorant to it. So there's a range.
Is there any concerns that it's not, that it's like, and I don't know that much about it, so I'm, that it's just kind of coming out of, it's like this whole new thing that hasn't really been tested. And so my kids are preschool and first grade, so they're like, to me, I see it as they're gonna get the whole run of it, and if it works, great. If not, then I guess, you know, the next generation will be fine. And like I said, everything that, you know, you guys have explained sounds good, and I'm just curious to see what your feelings are.
Well, it's gonna be an adjustment, you know, like Mike said. But the Massachusetts standards haven't changed dramatically. There are shifts, which we identified. So I think the fact that there's a lot of solid things in place, and teachers, you know, are used to teaching to standards now, and really the Massachusetts standards are the highest standards in the nation. And our MCAS results and other indicators show that the kids are learning the standards. So I think teachers are gonna be comfortable with that. We're just gonna have to make the shifts, you know, and yes, I as I identified it early on in the slides, I mean, I think we are a little concerned about why now, why so fast, why change everything? You know, why not just adjust the standards up and then take the MCAS test and you know, change it up a little bit to align with the standards. But, you know, there are all kinds of pressures that come down. There are pressures from, you know, special interest groups. They get in legislators' ears. They make laws. You know, so there's a lot of layers to it. That's why I think the message we wanted to say today is that, you know, there are some decisions we don't get to make, but there are decisions we do get to make. And so when we get to make them, we try to make them in the best interest, and have that balance.
Okay, and one other thing, you think the standards then are being raised? Because I've read two conflicting things. I'm like, I've heard that they're dumbing down, so then I'm hearing that it's being raised, so I don't know what.
I don't know where that comes from. I'm sure it's got a legitimate base in somebody's experience, but it hasn't been our experience here. That
Well,
the
if it
standards.
were the only thing we did, and it isn't, they're not the only standards we think about and use. We use a lot of things, including research and experience and practice, and if it were just a standards conversation, then, you know, and it was our first time in working with standards. We've been working with standards for 15 years in ELA and math, so we're pretty familiar with what standards are and what they're typically comprised of. It's just not the only thing that we use to determine what we teach.
Mike, would you say that
and
the
how we do
standards
that.
are dummied down in the new frameworks?
Personally, for me, no. You know, I mean, in some ways, you know, we're always open to changes, and we're going to try to address those changes, and you know, take different pedagogical approaches. But by and large, things haven't changed that much. I will say one thing for everyone to kind of be aware of: if we're recognizing patterns and cycles, if people remember when MCAS was first rolled out, the first year that it came out, the numbers were very low. You know, so and then because the test takers come out very ambitious it's a new test, we're gonna, you know, and then what they do the second year, I think the numbers went way up, so they almost made it too easy. And then they
And
kind
the
of
analysis
cal-
of the
They
test
have to
showed that
calibrate
that
Yes,
themselves.
yes,
and
they have to
count
calibrate
that.
themselves, so
Mm-hmm.
I would
It's true.
tell everyone to watch out for that, and to also not start ringing alarm bells so soon when and if that happens again. But it's something we should be, I think, conscious of.
The people who have to worry about that are the kids who need it for a graduation diploma.
right.
What we've said all along to people is we have students, because now we've given it a number of years, we have students in 3rd and 4th grade that maybe in needs improvement or warning, but by the time they get to 10th grade, they're proficient or advanced. Because the goal is, if we're doing this right, and our curriculum is well aligned, you know, every year, you know, the standards build on one another. And then the other thing that's nice, we identified that MCAS used to give us a lot of great information. So we could go in and say, okay, these 10 kids are really struggling, they've been struggling, these are the areas they're struggling in, we can do intervention along the way. So it's okay, you know, if people aren't proficient or advanced in 3rd grade, they'll be fine. It's just, it's gonna take, you know, some time, and we're just uncertain exactly what kind of information we're gonna get if a new test comes in. But we'll adjust, you know, that's what we'll do, and do the best we can with that.
Can I just quickly ask that for meeting notes purposes, if the two people that talked, if you could just state your name and your address, just for the notes.
Right. Lindsay Caridio, Carideo, 14 Osceola Farm Road.
Thank you.
Leah Tvankin for Longview Way.
Any other questions?
Can I ask, it might be a quick one, and you can say it's curriculum and it's not something that we do, and that's a perfectly fine answer. One of the things that I was reading a lot about is there's more, it's more breadth than it is depth. So it's a lot of critical thinking, and kind of one of the arguments with critical thinking and analysis is there's really no wrong answer if you can defend it. And one of the examples that I read about was a math one was, you know, 1 + 1 = 3 is not a wrong answer if the student can explain it, which in my head seems absurd.
Yeah, that-
But
I can tell
but
you
it was
that is
in
absurd.
a whole
Yeah.
bunch of different places. Is
Yeah,
there
no.
is there a
We would frown
change-
upon that.
Is there a change in fact-based education
Yeah.
versus
One of the major things that we talked about this year, actually, at the vertical team level, and I do wish Paula was here because she lets talk about foundational skills, was really addressing and identifying how can we ensure that these foundational skills are taught, and that we know that students know them, and that we know that we're really being true to grade level expectations in terms of foundational skills, so that when our students do move on, they can take advanced math and have all that background very solidly
Okay.
in their experience.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I know, we would not like that.
Yeah, no. I mean, you know, there is such a thing as, you know, helping kids learn how to explain their thinking, but wrong is wrong.
Everything within reason, do you know what I'm saying?
Right,
It's-
Plus
one is not 3.
Everything within
Yeah.
reason. And we have to get to the, you know, to that, why would you think that, you know, conversation, how can we ensure that
Yeah,
we're
because
supporting you
if
in
you ask
that?
a child, why do you
Not
think
learning.
that, and they explain it, then you know where they're tangled.
Right.
Right, you
Right.
know what to
Right.
do about that,
Right.
as opposed to just saying wrong.
Right.
That's not so helpful.
The red X. And
But wrong is wrong in that case.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was great. I appreciate you coming out and.
Thank you.
So hopefully that answers some of the questions that were raised. I think that was our intention, was to hopefully, you know, gather some, assure people that, you know, if we don't have a choice about it, we are trying to use what we have to make the best choices possible. And we'll see what happens with Park, but I do encourage, you know, Vanessa's part of the group
Yeah,
that's
we'd love to
looking
hear
at
your
it. I'm part of the
feedback, Vanessa.
superintendent's group, we're looking
Very
at
much.
it. You know, I'm sure, you know, superintendent's group, I'm sure, is looking at it.
Well, I think what's important for people to know, and I would say my experience in working in different districts is limited, but broad enough to understand that what Georgetown does not happen in every school district across the United States. That we operate at a level of professionalism, as I've learned from sitting in these meetings, that does not exist in general, I would say, across education. And that my understanding of these kinds of initiatives are to find a way to bring education to that level of professionalism in the areas where it's not operating the way it operates here. And I think that that's something that's worth doing as a nation. And we can argue and we can debate how that's done, but ultimately, I think that the goal is that every school district would be able to sit down and present, this is what it looks like in our district. These are the conversations we have with our teachers. These are the conversations we have, these vertical teams and even the mentoring. Like, we treat teachers as professionals and we respect them and we understand that human development is an ongoing process. It doesn't end when you leave college with your teaching degree.
Right.
You have to continue learning and you have to continue growing and you have to continue, and the way we do that is we look at what are we about, what is our mission, and how well are we accomplishing that mission. And the more clear we can be about what the mission is and the more tools we have to help us to understand how well we're reaching our goals, that's something that I think is really admirable. And that these kinds of reform movements, I see them as pushing all schools to be working in that way. And it comes from looking at what do the best schools do? This is what they do. And how do we get other schools to do that? And sometimes it just takes a little bit of mandate, a little bit of, we need to press people to be doing this kind of work.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Stu?
Hi, Stu Eggenberg, 2 Brownfield. Thank you for doing this. It was great information, and that presentation answers, I think, a lot of questions, particularly on how are we making these shifts. I think that's fantastic that you meet and work to exceed the standards. Like I'd said in the past couple meetings with you guys. Georgetown, like you say, Elena, we're a lot different than quite a few towns and districts. So, as I've said before, congratulations. It's great, and personally, we've had great experience with our 2 students and all that. So, aligning curriculum beyond the standards is great. I'm thrilled to hear that Algebra 1 is going to be taught in middle school, and I love the idea that it might actually be taught at 7th grade. And I did have a question on some of the visual and contextual, I think was the term you might have used, on math. So as an example, I would have loved it when I was in 9th grade if an algebra teacher could have explained to me how in the world would I ever use algebra in the real world. Okay? I spent 22 years in media, and all of our computations for cost per point and cost per gross rating point and all that stuff was all algebra. You know what I mean? So it would be great if somebody could, get that granular and be able to explain how does this stuff really work and what do you use it for and how would I use it if I was a media guy or a somebody doing surveys for mapping GIS stuff and you know what I mean. So I think that's fantastic if that's kind of the direction what you were is that.
It is. In
kind of
fact,
you were
you just
describing it?
reminded me, I need to put you in touch with Deb DeFrucio because she organizes a career fair for students at the middle school.
Oh, great.
And we had
That's
this
awesome.
wonderful experience just a couple weeks ago where parents came in and shared their work and the practices that they do and how, and so many of them were talking about exactly that. What you learn in school, what you learn in school is what it looks like in my job, and this is how I do it.
Well, like you were saying, Carol, like 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 3, but it's wrong, but why? You know
But
what I
why?
mean? Sort of, okay, if you can explain how you're kind of tangled up in that box, then that's somewhat helpful.
Yes,
so
definitely.
That was good. On the State Board of Education deciding next year, is there input from you as a district or school committees from around the state? Is there a consortium or anything that's directly feeding input from the taxpayers, from the school committees, from the districts up to this, or is this going to just be
Definitely from the Superintendent's Association.
Okay.
They have monthly meetings. The Commissioner of Education has an advisory committee, and there's a representative sample from across the state of people who meet on a regular basis with him and his staff. In fact, that was a lot of the impetus for slowing the process down, because we would have already been implementing it. It was gonna be a done deal. And, you know, so, and I think the the school committee they belong to Mass Association of School Committees, and I believe the School Committee Association has had some advocacy around this as well.
MSSAA, and I'm sure the elementary branch of that also has a legislative branch to it that has
Are
input.
we as a school committee engaged in that?
Well,
Those two organizations directly on this topic or other topics, generally speaking?
Well, I reached out today to our field rep for the Mass School Committees, just to get his take on what
Yeah.
he's heard and what's going on. So Mike's great about getting right back to us.
Yeah,
so.
no, I mean, I think that's fantastic. So, you know, obviously if you've got, you know, concerns or issues or whatever, that's what I was saying, you know, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know, certainly bring them up and be able to, discuss them. The costs, you know, I appreciate the outline of the costs. I didn't see any numbers on it, but I know you're not there yet, so I get that. But I just wanna just be, with my selectman hat on for a minute, I just don't wanna get blindsided.
No, absolutely.
At the last minute when we're in budgeting and you guys come around and you're like, I need an extra 500 grand or an extra million or an extra whatever the number is.
That won't
I
happen.
don't know, I'm just throwing numbers out. Don't hold me to those numbers, anybody. But, you know, just because in the budgeting process, we've got, you know, a lot of working parts that we go through. And I know, if I recall the year right, I remember one year we were going through the school budget process, you know, going through the book and at one point, I remember seeing $85,000 in the budget for textbooks, and then at the next meeting, it got scratched. We didn't have money for textbooks, and you know, that's problematic. And as a school committee, you know, that's part of what your job is to contain costs, and the largest cost you have is your teachers' salaries and benefits and step and scale. So I would hope you're very actively, you know, as a taxpayer advocate, pushing against that step and scale and the rise in the costs and everything all the time. With, you know, what we do on the Board of Selectmen, you know, we've got the issues, just, you know, on the non-union employees that we're always pushing on. And there's a major disparity between the non-union employees in this town and the union employees in terms of what real term increases are every year. So that's where the costs come in and concerns, and the fact that we've gone and asked taxpayers a lot of money over the past 3 years. We've had, you know, an override and then two major schools. I mean, we've basically gone to the taxpayers for $60 million, you know, over the past 3 years. And trust me, Board of Selectmen, I hear that all the time, you know, about people's taxes going up and everything like that. So certainly would love to get a real early and often read on costs if you have some projections and that type of thing. And just not like Dave said, I'm not sticking my nose in your business, but just certainly, you know, it does come around, you know, when it comes to budgeting and all that, trying to get all those pieces to fit together and that type of thing. And then my only last comment would be on the data policy. I can follow up with you, Carol, on some stuff that I've been reading. I got a 90-page thing here on that, and FERPA's been stripped. I mean, it provides no protections at all to parents. So that's a whole nother topic, but I would love if you would look into that. And assuming that is correct, and again, that's from the Pioneer Institute, you know, which was in the other day, there's a lot of concern there.
Yeah.
And as I had talked about, you know, some of the big data with retina scans and whatnot, and just, there was an example where the Washington Times or whatever, quote, under the auspices of being an education facility, got student data from Washington State students and published it and whatnot. And I mean, that's how lax the law is now. And you know, I would ask the question, if I were sitting on the school committee and I was going up to the state, you know, to advocate, I would be asking the question, knowing what they're looking for, retina scans, facial recognition, voice prints, fingerprints, and 400 other data points, why in the hell does the government have any business in gathering that information? There's only one class of citizen that gets fingerprinted in this country, and it's called a criminal. I'm sorry, my kids aren't criminals. So I got a real problem with retina scans, facial recognition, voice prints, fingerprints, That won't happen. If it's gonna happen in this school system, trust me, I will make a point that my kids won't be in school when that goes.
Yeah, and we haven't, that hasn't
You know what I mean? But I'm
been,
just
that
saying,
wasn't part of the process last year,
As a school
but-
committee, when you are talking to the state and you're talking to your, your reps, that would be a big question to ask is, why is this data being collected? Find out for yourselves. I got my own opinions on why it is being collected, but find out for yourselves. I don't understand why a fingerprint or a voice print or a facial recognition would have anything to do with education, because it doesn't. Do they need to have your address and what, yeah, okay, I get that, birthday, blah, 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 scores, yes, but political affiliation of parents, this and that, all the other data points that they're looking for, not necessary, and it's just, that's a really bad situation.
Yeah, so we can definitely advocate for the safest security possible.
Yeah,
Like I said,
right.
last year, when we piloted Park, they didn't ask for any of that information. Again,
Right.
we're not doing it this year,
No,
so
no, I know.
we don't know whether they're
Right.
going to or not. but-
And that's what's been talked about and discussed about, and I don't know for a fact if that's where it's going, or that's what they're going to require, but
Right.
better to ask the question up front and now, and get it in the, get it out in the light, rather than all of a sudden have everybody surprised and have a bunch of issues,
Stu, just to talk about an example of what you may be thinking is ahead, is I have a son who has taken SAT exams. And so we register for the exam and we print out the ticket, and I was looking at the ticket.
Yeah.
And it has, you have to have a picture, so there's facial recognition there, and there's his address and some, I mean, not the, retinal or the fingerprints or
Right.
anything like that, but there is quite a bit of information on that, and that's been gathered by educational testing services for I don't know how long, but just to let you know that that's out there too as a practice.
No, I know, I mean, I don't know why a test would ever have to have a picture of a kid on it. That makes no sense.
They're trying to make sure that
There's
he's,
I think the SATs, it's that you make sure that
That's
is
the
the
person
kid.
taking the
yeah,
kid.
the right person taking the test.
Teacher tests are like that,
You know.
fingerprints and licenses. When
Right.
teachers go to take the
Right.
MTELs and other tests, they have to
Yeah.
provide that
Yeah.
kind of
But
material.
all in all,
Right.
thank you for the great
welcome.
information tonight and bringing it up and vetting it out, and thank you so much.
You're welcome,
Appreciate it.
Okay. I
Thank
think
you.
we'll,
That
I
was
think
good.
we'll do MCAS at the next meeting.
Yeah, do you mind doing it at the next
No,
meeting?
not at all.
We don't mind.
Because it's like,
We'll have more information to share.
Right, we will. We absolutely will.
I always enjoy that, but I don't know if I could actually.
Take it all in. Take it all in right now.
And it will give me a little more of an opportunity to look at it.
Yes.
More.
Absolutely, yeah. Same here. I agree.
Okay. So does that agenda look busy on the 23rd?
Well, it's gonna be busy, it's
Yeah.
gonna be busy, we're doing some district improvement plans. But I think maybe it coordinates nicely because we're gonna be talking about focus area one quickly and the MCAS results. So I think it's okay. I think it's okay.
Okay. All right, we're gonna, go right down to the financial report.
Financial report.
Just the blue cord? Yes.
Julie, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Good night, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you for your help.
Good night. Thank you. I remember the regents too.
I think you never forget them once you take the Regents.
That's right.
Financial report?
Sorry. The first thing that in your packet is the list of transfers.
Yep.
So, next meeting, you'll get the budget report after you approve these transfers. It's gonna be awesome. Yay!
Can I ask a financial report type question?
Sure.
The ski team that we were talking about, where is that money? It's a new program.
That's it.
Wasn't budgeted,
Athletic
a year
revolving.
ago.
It's in the athletic revolving account.
Okay.
So when we, I don't know if I typically do updates during the year, but when we develop the budget, we give you a budget for each revolving account we have. It's like the preschool revolving, and Chris does a great job managing his small little budget and making it go far, but when he does his athletic presentation for the budget, he has a really kind of giant spreadsheet where he has every sport, every cost of every sport, and then what the user fees are. So for this particular sport, though, they're gonna charge each kid whatever it's gonna cost, so it doesn't cost the
It's
district
self-funding,
anything.
right?
Oh, right,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
So
For the
right
first 2
now,
years.
Yeah.
right now, he has a limited district budget for athletics, 60,000. Is it like 60?
From the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, about 60,000.
About 60,000, and then everything else
And
is driven through
33
his.
from choice.
You know, all right, so
So
he
he's
has,
got-
he's got like,
It's got a less than $100,000.
Right. then everything
And the
else is
rest is
through his,
user fees
his
and-
fees, yeah.
Okay.
I'd say it's 95% user fees.
Yeah, probably.
Used to be 100. Used to be 100. So when we did the override, we put the 60 in.
Mm,
And then we've always hoped we could take it out of choice because we don't really like the recurring expense there, but,
Right.
you know, we don't wanna, it's balancing that with increasing the user fees.
Yeah, we don't wanna do that.
And we don't wanna do that.
No,
We've done
it's
that.
already
It's
high
tough,
enough.
yeah, it's high
Yeah,
enough,
I've
I
talked to
agree.
people who have challenges with
Yeah,
with
and
it.
you need to
Yeah.
have
It's
them
very hard.
choose, because if the kids wanna play a sport,
I'm sure we have
we
some
like that
students that
all around.
they don't play
you know.
three sports because their parents
Exactly.
can't afford it.
I know.
That's right.
I know that's the case.
Okay, so we're gonna, so we have to approve the line item transfer. Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to transfer line items number 60. Oh, 59, 59?
47
47.
through 89.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm. 47
Sagittarius.
through 89, as presented.
So moved.
Oh, do I do the total increase? I'm gonna include that?
It's not an increase, it's just the total.
Well,
Yeah,
when
I
we
don't-
With the total of $350,767.11 as presented.
Unmoved, now so moved again.
Second. Discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Okay, so there's 3 separate invoices for the turf project.
Yep.
So you'll have to-
We had a little bit of an issue last week with the project.
Yeah, they hit ledge. But the good news is they're no longer having to deal with the ledge.
Yeah, good.
So they're really moving along now.
Was it again, or
Well,
What's the question?
was it, because we.
well, we might have
approved
known,
something
but just so
too-
the
You,
public.
Oh,
knows.
okay.
You had to have, there were 3, I think there were 3 change orders, just because they needed another day with the hammer.
Was it Thursday, Friday, Monday?
Yeah, I think
I
so.
think it might, and so, yeah.
Because they found that they were dealing with blue granite. And blue granite apparently is like the toughest rock you're ever gonna encounter. And so they had this big crane with a huge hammer on it. And normally, apparently when you hammer into rock, the way it's constructed, it usually will shatter into big
Rubble,
pieces.
yeah.
Not blue granite. So
Then it just
he
gives
would,
off
cause I
accident,
was over
right?
there, I was over there talking to the
Didn't
guy.
know that about
He
blue granite.
hammered in and it just created powder. So they had to go 18 inches back into the rock and it was literally powder, powder, powder. That's why it took 3 additional days of blasting. Normally of drilling, normally you would blast, they told me you would blast that.
Mhm.
But that wasn't happening. So, wow, the guy was very patiently out there creating powder. But it's
I
done now.
didn't know about blue granite before.
I didn't either.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, so I have,
Gail?
oh, it's double-sided.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you have
So
Gale,
I have 2 of Gale,
nope, you have
Yep,
Gale
Gale.
on the first side,
okay, and then
Green
Green
Seal.
Seal, okay.
and then
the
the
AIA.
quirk is the bottom one.
The change order?
Oh, no, you should have this, Barbie, as an invoice.
Oh, okay, this one.
And there's a lot of numbers on it, but it's the current payment due on the left-hand side, 319,793.
319. Okay,
So,
okay, so I have to do these all separately?
no, I don't know if you do, because Mary now has me starting to put these on a warrant.
Okay,
So I think you could probably just do the total, and then the committee, you could vote on the total for the 3 invoices,
So
and then
is that number
everybody
on here
sign
for
it.
her?
The total's right there.
All right, here, Barbie.
I
Totals in
think
a
that's
minute.
probably the easier way now. Before, I had to get your votes every single time and send it to CPC.
Yeah.
CPC had to send it to the Board of Selectmen. They got rid of that. They said, this is our project, the school committee can approve it.
Okay, so am I just gonna approve it though on, as?
I would just
the
approve the
in middle?
total at the very bottom there. That would
Okay, but
include
don't have
all-
to get into invoices, numbers and all that?
No, and then
Okay.
you can all sign it.
Okay, and just listed as the turf field project?
Yeah, you could say,
How many invoices were there? Did you say
there's
to
three,
approve
I
the
have
three
invoices, yep.
Why are there four listed? Oh, they're.
I had to broke out,
twice. Yeah, yeah.
I broke
Yeah,
up
you
the
broke
soil.
into the different. Okay, so, the chair will entertain a motion to approve 3 invoices, one for Quirk Construction, one for Gale Associates, and one for Green Seal Environment for the turf field project in the total amount of $332,748.60.
Correct.
As presented.
Perfect.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Did we do this one? This just required Barbie's signature.
I don't know if the school committee, I wasn't at the last meeting. Did the school
I
committee
think you
approve
did.
any change order?
More?
I
No,
think they
just
did
you.
approve.
Okay.
This is the second one that looks like
I
this.
need, I need,
Oh, they do.
I need
Sorry,
3
thank you.
signatures.
I'm sorry.
So,
Okay.
this is the official change order for,
That's all right.
How much is it okay?
Yeah, just
yeah, so Barbie signed this already, so I think we're okay.
sign it where I put the sticker. Just
And
cross
is
your name
that
out
okay
there.
there?
That's all right. Just cross that out. I think that's Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
So that's coming back.
Well, wait a minute, we're gonna
Oh,
have
we're
to do
not?
some more.
I have a-
Oh, everybody has to sign?
3, I
Go
need 3
3,
signatures.
right?
Let's go back the other
Who's
way.
the lucky one? Okay, so that's, but just to let everybody know, it's it's on target,
it's
and
going
if
great
anybody's
now.
had a chance to go down there, it is exciting
Yeah,
to
it's
see
very
it.
exciting.
You know, it's so, how soon do you think the carpet will be?
Well, I think they have to continue to move the dirt.
Yep.
They've got the pile of bad dirt and then the pile of good dirt. This week, that is gonna be, next week it's gonna be moved, the good dirt's gonna be moved to Pembroke, and then they're going to dispose of the other. And now they're flattening it
pipes
out,
in.
they're putting the pipes in,
Wow.
so,
That's
I
great.
don't know, I think in 2 weeks maybe? Very exciting. The lights are in.
Yes, I
lights are
saw
in.
the
The
lights.
kids all told me that.
The
Kids
lights are
talking
in,
about
so,
it.
well, actually, 4 sets of lights are in, but there are gonna be 6. Thought we were gonna have to wait till phase 2 to get the other 2, but apparently
Oh, we're
that's
gonna
gonna
put in
work
6
out that
lights.
there's gonna be all 6. Plus, we got some remember Mike, told you about how there was some vandalism to the bleachers? Somebody sawed off the things and stole the aluminum.
Oh, I don't know if I heard that.
Oh, you didn't hear
Over the summer.
So over the summer, up on the upper fields, somebody
Oh,
vandalized.
yes,
Get
the
money
one,
for the
two ones
aluminum?
on
Oh, I
the
didn't know
upper
that.
2 nights in a row.
fields.
And
They-
so
and
we,
they scrapped
I've
the-
noticed that there's something wrong with them.
I
I've
didn't know
noticed that they don't
Yeah.
look right.
definitely, but put a claim in and the insurance company covered it. So actually, there'll be
Oh, good.
nice new bleachers that we can use with the
Money.
turf project.
Oh, that's
And the
good to know.
scoreboard, can we talk about the
Yeah,
scoreboard?
we should talk about the scoreboard, I was just thinking the same thing,
Yeah.
I can segue right into that. So the scoreboard, we don't have enough money in the project to put a scoreboard, but, the, GAA individuals that have been so generous with us, so John Pingree, is looking to get some, people to donate it, or businesses to donate it, so that's what his job is now.
He's
being-
got some people very interested.
He does have people very interested, but the thing is, the school committee has to approve that, because if he has these people, donate the money, they would most likely want to have their name, advertised on the sign.
Mhm.
And we have a policy that the school committee would have to approve that, so we just wanna let John know before the people actually say, yeah, let me write you the check,
Right.
that we will, have no problem with them, wanting to advertise.
I mean, we'll
So-
approve, it wouldn't
I
be a
mean,
gaudy
yeah,
thing.
we
I
would
mean, we
approve
would
the
approve
design,
the
right?
The
yeah.
design.
Cause you're right, it
Yeah,
has to be.
but we just wanna at least
more
get an
about being
idea
a
of what your
scoreboard
thoughts
than-
are, or if you
yeah,
have any
it's
questions.
advertisement.
No, just the advertisements would be at the bottom. It would be, we'd have to decide if it's gonna be the James Collin Moore Field or Home of the Royals, whatever we're gonna put on it. And then there'd be the typical scoreboard stuff, and the advertisements would be at the bottom.
I'm sure it would
But,
be done very
you know,
tastefully.
Yes,
And
it
it'd
would.
be
I mean,
local
it would be.
businesses, right?
Yeah,
We're
local
talking
businesses.
about-
It's, no, it's
Right.
local businesses. Yeah.
Okay.
And would it all wind, I guess it would all wind up being like one-time contributions, or, because like the name
Yes.
of whatever business is gonna be there for a long time, is the expectation it would be kind of a one-shot
Oh, right, that
fundraising
they would pay
effort?
for the whole thing?
Or, yeah, or like what's,
Yeah, it would just be so it, you know, one of the groups he's talking to, he's asking them if they would do a one-time donation to the cost and purchase of the scoreboard.
Mhm.
If a business was willing to do the whole thing, that'd be great, but if not, and they're willing to contribute some, so we would just want
Right.
to acknowledge,
Sure.
you know, and, I mean, it may be that the people who, if somebody gives a big chunk, they get a bigger square, you know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
But we would organize that all in a design that would come to you. I think the purpose right now is for John to continue to go forward and be asking people, you know, if the expectation they have is, well, gee, would I get some recognition on the sign? If that's not clear and you haven't said, yes, that's okay with us, as long as we get to approve the design, you know, we just wouldn't want anybody to have any false information.
Misunderstandings.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But you have a policy that basically talks about advertising.
right.
And
As my other one was, would they be giving money to the GAA giving money to the school, or would they be giving money to the school?
they'd be.
The individual businesses. I guess I'm wondering, like, would we wind up being approving, because we approve donations and checks and
Yes, we
everything,
do,
would we
yeah.
be accepting a donation from XYZ company? Or would we be accepting a lump sum donation from the GAA for,
Well, it depends on who purchases it,
that's the
right?
only reason I'm
I think
asking.
If we purchase the scoreboard, right, then I would say they're making a donation, the different businesses would make the donation to us,
Mhm.
and it would be designated in the donation account for the
For the scoreboard.
purchase and installation of the scoreboard
Mhm.
at the
And I
middle
would
high school.
assume that the athletic director would want to be the one to purchase the school.
Yes, well, Chris has had,
Get what we want, yeah.
extensive opportunities for input into this and actually has laid out some specifications that he would like to see. And we've all been sort of part of where it would be located and.
I guess the only reason I'm asking is there was a mention of the turf field in the Georgetown record.
Yes.
And just making sure that the legalities are handled before instead of after, since it
Mhm.
seems kind of,
Keeping all our communication as clear as
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
understandable
we had a
as
meeting
possible.
today, in my office with, attorneys and GAA and me and Mike Farrell. So, you know, that went very well.
Mhm.
And, it does look like, you know.
It's all working
It's
out.
gonna work out nicely. I'm not anticipating it's gonna need to go to town meeting,
Oh,
but
that would be
again,
good.
we agreed on terms, now the lawyers will draft it. And then when you see it in writing, you'll decide, and there may be some negotiation, but we're hoping that the licensing agreement is the way we
forward.
go.
Okay.
So that would have to be pretty quickly that we would know if it has to go to town meeting, because what's it, 2 weeks, is it 2 weeks
Yeah.
before?
October
Yeah, it'll be
27th.
And then
probably
it's 2 weeks before?
Yeah.
dealt with in the next
Yeah.
couple of days.
Oh, good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that would be great if it didn't have to go.
Yeah.
to town meeting.
Yeah.
And
I
then it
agree.
got resolved.
And it got resolved. That's right. Everybody put their heads
Fairly and
together.
equitably, yes.
Right, yep. So,
So,
I don't
thoughts
know.
on the scoreboard?
So I just wonder, down the road, you know, so we get this donation, we put somebody's name on the scoreboard. Down the road, somebody wants to give the school a donation of business, and then they want recognition somewhere.
Mhm.
Can they say, well, you did this before, you did it for
Right.
them, why can't you
Well,
do it
well, we
for
have
us?
done it
Be good,
before.
trying to-
If you go to the baseball field,
Uh-huh.
out back of Pearlie, you'll notice there's a scoreboard there in honor of Bert Spofford, who was very influential for years and years in Georgetown with Georgetown baseball, and
Sure.
he's a very, it sounds like a magnificent man. And, you know, when he passed away, a group wanted to honor him, and so they bought a scoreboard. And then what happened is, depending if you were a gold, silver, bronze, or white donor, they got their name. So the scoreboard is a scoreboard, and then there's an attachment right under the scoreboard that hangs that basically lists people's names that
Okay.
have donated, so there is precedent for it.
Okay, but I mean,
But you always have the
we
choice.
always have the choice.
Exactly.
To say no, and without repercussion.
No,
Okay.
No.
Yeah,
Says
I
you get to
I
choose.
think it's, you know, again, like we always say, this town is very generous,
Mhm.
and why not give them recognition, the people
Mhm.
who
Right.
are so generous to the schools.
Okay, that's good.
and they don't usually ask for a lot of recognition.
Right.
We have a lot of people.
Yeah, anonymous donations,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of them.
I suspect they're not
They
the
do.
ones who are crying
Yeah.
to the Board of Selectmen about their taxes going
They're happy that somebody spends a minute sending them a letter, saying thank you for your
up.
donation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Subcommittee reports? Do we have any?
We had a safety meeting this morning.
We did?
It was
Okay.
wonderful, as usual. It's just,
Was it brought up about just in the news, every time you watch the 10 o'clock or the 11 o'clock news, one of the first stories is about the amount of bomb scares that are going on in schools.
we
Was
did
this-
have,
yeah,
we
okay.
had, we did
Cause
have
I think
that
it's up to
discussion.
15.
Yeah,
Just within a week or
um,
something.
So, I mean, the fire chief talked
Brought that
about
up,
that,
yeah.
just that we should know that's, our policy is to evacuate schools, evacuate the school if there's a bomb threat, and
Was the
that they.
police chief there?
Lieutenant Thompson was here today.
Okay, so what was his thoughts as, as a police officer? I know on the news, they have these,
He
all
said,
these
I
analysts
thought it
there
was
that-
really interesting, he said that, there's just somebody wants us to feel like we're not as safe as we think we are.
Okay.
And, yeah, your response, Carol, I wanted to argue with you, cause I actually think like they're just, people want us to be scared. And I
Oh, I
actually
agree
think
with that.
most of the time we are much safer than we.
So what
we-
was,
we-
what was your response?
No, I think I said, sometimes, there's probably some truth to that we'd like to believe we're more secure than we are. I mean, we do everything we can
I
and
think
within
we
our
have
power.
a news media that
but-
really likes to, I mean, the human brain is wired
Yeah.
to be on edge.
Yeah.
And we respond to, but we don't hear, I mean, we talk about it here, the good news.
Yeah.
The good news. We have so much good news at these meetings. Like we don't get to hear good news every day.
No.
And yet, if we stopped
Mhm.
for 5 minutes a day and looked at all the good things that happen in our lives, we might just realize that we have far more good things happening than
Absolutely.
threats. And people just,
Yeah.
they just like
Yeah.
to have fun. And when we have technology, we have capacity for people to send those kinds of threats now. And so if
Yeah.
somebody wants to prove that they can do it, do bad things happen? Of course they do. I
And that's
mean,
what the
we can't
police chief
dispute
used to
that.
say, Chief Mull used to say, if someone has a penchant for violence, they're gonna be successful to some extent. Our job is to mitigate the opportunities for that. And that's why we spend the energy we spend in making sure our schools are as safe as we feel we can make them. But his point always
If we worried
was,
about being scared about getting hurt, you
Yeah, you
just
can't be
never-
paralyzed
Right, and that's what
we
they
have
said,
to-
terrorists want us to be.
you can't be
Right.
paralyzed by
Right.
fear.
No, you
Absolutely.
can't, you have to expect the best, and you have to help the students to feel safe and to understand, that they are.
I don't know, it's
But
just-
prepare for the worst.
Right, it's
But
just
be prepared for the worst and
kids
understand
do
that
look
that's
at the
really
news.
important.
And
Yes.
kids do say it,
To
like, even
nerve-wracking.
my children
Yeah.
have said, Mom,
Know that-
school isn't safe anymore, and I'm like, that's absolutely not true, and
Still the
like, my
safest place you
kids
can
think
be.
of it as, you should have a guard outside, and it's like, it's so sad that children feel that way,
That is sad.
But
That is sad.
you're right, media does, tend to.
That's just the world we live in. I
Yeah.
think it's unfortunate, and yet,
But,
Yeah.
if we are prepared for the worst and we do have emergency and crisis
Right.
plans in
That's-
place and
We
everybody's
do, and that's what
communicating
the
that
reports
that's
for-
going to
for
help
today,
students to feel
they-
safer. I mean,
But they had
not
that unannounced code blue at the
we'll
middle
probably
high
never
school,
need
and
it,
went
but we
really
have it.
well. That's the reports we're getting, is like, people are paying attention, issues with the buses, they're being discussed, but they're coming up, and people are asking for help where they need help, and they're doing the drills that they need to be doing, and they're going well, and, I think, we're responding. I feel like we're responding quickly, like the lines being painted at Pembroke, and you're gonna call
the contractors and talk
Mhm.
about the not having their vehicles interfering with the pickup traffic in the afternoon over there. The fire chief was also just so complimentary of the person from the bus company who came and did a presentation on bus safety to the fire department, so that if there ever was an emergency, the emergency responders would know exactly what they needed to do to secure the bus and evacuate the children. And he just said they went over and above in
That's
educating
good.
the fire
That's
department about, you know, how to respond to their buses in an emergency situation. No, nothing.
Yeah, he was very, he was talking to me the other day, cause he came over, we're doing a bunch of, fire safety kind of programs, Rusty Ricker's
Right.
been, doing a lot more, and he said, you know, I just have to say, he said, you know, I talked to my comrades in the fire departments, you know, and he said, I tell them, oh yeah, we're doing this in the schools, and yeah, the superintendent put me in charge of the principals, and they set this whole thing up, and he said, you know, they all say, that doesn't happen, like, how do you have that? You know, that there's this relationship where, you know, you work together. He said, I'm just amazed at how many people don't have that experience. So that was really nice. I mean, he said that to the whole group today, that he was very happy about that.
So
It's a good
amazing
thing
to me.
about
I mean,
small towns.
Yes.
this town really, people, but small towns don't
Yeah,
have
I
to
was
be
gonna say,
cooperative.
in
They don't.
some small towns, that it's dog eat dog, but, you know.
This
that-
is my territory and that's your territory,
Yeah.
and we don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
So we.
No, we haven't got that
It just
problem.
continues to get
Lovely,
better.
lovely working conditions.
Absolutely, you know.
Well, through,
that
you know,
safety meeting.
continual, right, meetings
Yeah.
that are held on a
Yeah,
regular
con-
basis
con-
and people
good
talk to
communication,
each other,
that's
yes.
the secret, yep.
Right.
Yep.
Well, that's good.
Wonderful.
We'll probably be voting on the bus contract later this year,
Oh,
right?
is it-
That's-
is it-
Yeah.
Yes, we will.
That's got some issues that will be,
When would that
we want
timeline be,
buses.
Joan? Do
You
you
have
think?
to, well, I wanna get it out so we can have it in our budget.
Right, that's what I was
So
thinking, so.
I'm waiting on,
December?
I told Barry that we need to redo all the routes, cause you're gonna have you're gonna have kids from, you know, like, it's
Right.
not gonna be the same routes.
Yeah.
So, there's not gonna be any more Pearly.
That's
for,
right.
for buses, so Barry has
Yeah.
to work out the routes. He said let him get his feet wet with school starting with everything,
Yeah.
and then he would work on the routes, and then we'd have to send it out to bid.
But we did talk about, you know, like, so how do you figure it a certain number of buses? Is it the current number of buses? Is there a way, since this is a new opportunity, do we try to figure out how many buses we need to just get everybody there and in and out in a timely manner and not have to do double runs? How many buses would that take? You know, so there are some, Joan and I talked about the possibility of sort of costing it out in two ways, you know, so that we could see what the impact of that would be.
Right.
But there just is no educational value to kids spending an hour before school while the buses go get the other kids. And then at the end of the
Oh,
day,
well,
being
even
after
now, like,
school, there's just there's no educational value to that.
I know some parents,
Like it.
like it
Well,
because
yes,
it
because
does
they
help
work.
them out, and
Yeah.
I get that, but, you know, there were, sometimes the kids wouldn't get home until like after 4.
Or later, on snowy days.
Or getting to
that's
school 30 minutes before school begins even, I think is.
It never made sense to me, but Barbie's right, sometimes with working parents, so that's part of when we changed the bus routes, and we changed that, you know, we basically really bumped up our before and after school programs,
So that's
because the
something
goal
we'll
was
be-
to give the
when we-
option to parents.
When we have new bus routes for next year, when we're discussing that, is that something the school committee will vote on?
Yep.
So, I think we should make sure we have the public aware of when that discussion is
Yes.
taking place, because it sounds like there's a lot of communities throughout Georgetown who have an interest in seeing their areas being
Like the
served.
developments, you mean?
Well, what were we talking about? Pillsbury Lane and Lakeshore
I've
Drive?
heard parents who are
People would
concerned and
like-
who have questions
Yeah.
about, you know, what's
How do we
going to
make
happen.
these decisions? So just to make
next
sure the
year
public's informed,
with the
we'll
bus
be
routes.
voting on this, and there'll be a
Yeah.
time when we're discussing it, and we welcome their input, so that we know what people's concerns and what they'd like to see happen, and,
Yes, absolutely.
whether they're willing to pay for it and all that good stuff. You know? That was another
That's-
option we
those are all
discussed,
options,
is
right?
charging for the buses, so,
Mhm.
yeah, that's coming.
Yep.
But, all good.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Who else has met?
we have not had a public relations meeting since the last school committee meeting, but we have one scheduled for October 22nd, is that right?
Sounds, yeah. It was, I remember the end of October.
End of October.
Wednesday, yes, and we're gonna continue the discussion about Let's Talk. And I was able to talk to the superintendent from
Oh, you
Concord.
were? How good?
She was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. She gave me a lot of good information. She finds it very helpful. She likes the anonymous feature. And we're gonna be discussing the goals for the year ahead, the new district communications plan, active Twitter, Facebook, and superintendent's blog, district satisfaction survey, and continual website development.
Well, how long is your meeting?
20 minutes. It's amazing.
We whipped right through it.
Wow.
Or we put the same item on the next agenda.
We will get to all of those topics. Let's see, what else? We had an emergency, well, not emergency, it was just to sign invoices for the school building committee on October 2nd, relating to the septic
Right.
system there. And everything's fine, and Pat Saida, the, OPM still feels that we have a very good, healthy contingency.
Good.
We're still on time, actually a little ahead of budget, ahead of schedule and on budget. So, I mean, we're doing well in terms of schedule and budget.
the building? When it looks more like it's appropriate for them to be there, when they're gonna say, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Because it's a construction site.
it's a construction site,
And,
which is why.
you know, It's just.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't want anyone to get hurt.
We don't want
Yeah,
anyone
it's
to
more-
get hurt
It's more
yet.
about,
Good.
we just,
That
we
wow
wanna take, we
factor.
wanna take pictures of it and let them
Right.
see them.
On
You're
October
gonna do that,
14th,
right?
we're
And put it
gonna
on
do, yes.
Facebook and-
But they're
Yes,
definitely
on
gonna-
October 15th, I'm gonna take a lot of pictures, because I know people really wanna see what's going on, and I understand that,
Yeah,
I
of
wanna
course.
see
Very-
that too.
you're very
So,
curious, yeah.
I will be absolutely on, putting as many as I can on there.
Yeah, there actually was some questions at
But-
the Board of Selectmen meeting, from a individual that attended the meeting, so we just wanna, let him know as well as the public that, like you had said, it's on target a little earlier than what we had
Yes.
thought, which is great, and we'll
And-
have a tour.
We'll have a tour.
We're gonna have a tour and you'll put up some pictures in
that'll
case
be
people
all-
wanna check it out.
That's right, and this last meeting was very short, just for those invoices, but the next meeting will have more detail, and I'll
When's
be
that?
sure to report
That's
on that.
after the
That's
tour.
after the tour on October 14th,
Okay.
yes.
And, Joan and me and Chuck.
Oh.
And who else? Who else was there? Mike.
Margaret.
We met today to talk about the plan for the move, like what are our options?
Oh, like a moving
Yeah,
company?
like, do we do a moving company, do we
ourselves,
do
right.
the inmates, do we do ourselves, do we do a hybrid of that?
So what are you gonna
Chuck
do?
gave us, well, we don't know, Chuck
Oh,
gave
so
us
he
some
gave you all the
ideas,
options.
and then Chuck is going to write a summary of the discussion we had today, and then, we'll have a better sense,
Yeah.
but we would obviously come to you and talk about that, but, we're just vetting the ideas
Yeah,
now.
cause there are a lot of options, different options.
There are.
And I did hear from a parent who had concern about the health, the impact to children of Wi-Fi and versus hardwire and all that, and so I'll be bringing that up at the school building committee meeting, just to share the concern and share the
Just wanna
information.
drop Wes
I
an
mean-
email on that too, just drop.
Yes,
drop him
I
an-
did
Okay.
that, so, yeah, it's
So many things to
so
think
many
about.
things. And then, well, as long as I'm going, CPAC, the Special Education Parents Advisory Council, we had a terrific meeting on October 1st. It was a meet and greet with Dr. Donna Straight.
Oh, nice.
And we
To
basically,
sign all
we were
three.
trying to we were getting ideas for what parents would be interested in, to learn and hear about, and for meetings going forward for the rest of the school year. And, so if anybody has any ideas, any thoughts of what they would like to have presentations on, we have presentations scheduled. Let's see. Developing social skills in the age of social media is one presentation in April. The next CPAC meeting will be October 29th. It is from 9 to 10 a.m. at the middle high school. So it'll be a
And that's like a coffee, right?
A coffee chat, yeah, with
They're just trying different
Dr.
things,
Straight.
because it's
Yeah.
been very hard to get.
Right, so they're gonna try and do like a morning and then an evening, like later on. in
Right,
April.
And
so
they
it's
might try
just-
some
That's great.
trainings both times of the day, parents are asking for some and they want a support group, that's what I got out of that. The few parents that were there really want the CPAC, not only to be a place they can get information, but they wanna have the opportunity to have it be like a, comparing notes, getting ideas from other people who might be in the same situation, so.
And that's on December 3rd. There's going to be a CPAC Parents Holiday Coffee Connection at Shelby Walker, who
Yep.
is the president of the CPAC, at her home. She's very graciously
Yep.
invited people to just come and sit and talk with each other, so. But yeah, so October 29th will be an opportunity to sit with Dr. Straight and ask her those tough questions. Highly recommended. So, yeah.
Can I ask about a committee that doesn't really exist? Is there any news on the technology committee putting together, or?
Actually, today, Wes had a meeting at 3 o'clock. So I don't know much about that, cause it just appeared in my email. I had the best intentions of going there, but just didn't make it. But I know
Something's moving.
it was posted, so it's moving, yeah.
And we're gonna invite some people. Is there gonna be an advisory component to that committee?
Yeah, I
I mean,
believe so.
maybe.
Remember, Wes said, anybody who wants to come is welcome to come, but the question is, are we making sure we're getting it, are we publicizing it? So that's something we should think about.
Right.
Like, where are we posting it? How are we letting people know about it?
Right. So any information you could get to
could
me on
send it to
that would
folk-
be
yeah,
terrific,
send-
about the next meeting or.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Just one quick thing under old business. We did want to revisit the Baker Adams process again. Alana and I are interested in doing it again. We are hoping that maybe somebody else on the committee would wanna join us and just see what we can do.
Then you'll have a quorum. Then you'll have a
Yeah, and then
quorum.
we'd have a,
Oh, so we can't do that?
oh, you can't have three. Right.
Oh.
That's fine.
Take it back, take it back.
Yeah, Pam, you know what, if you wanna work with Pam, I actually think, because I think some,
It's up to you. If you would like to do it, I'd be comfortable. I just have a suggestion about the prompt. I mean, I could make that to you and
she
you
could
could handle
send
it.
it to you.
Or I could do it if you'd rather. It's
yeah, well, we
really,
could go, I mean, that's,
I'm comfortable either way.
I'm also comfortable either way. I don't feel ownership of it. I feel like it's something that's good to get a lot of eyes on and a lot of input.
But it might make sense for you to stick with it for one more round and then have Pam and anybody else give input as to what
Okay.
they saw.
I can just make a suggestion for the
Yeah,
prompt and
cause I
give it
think
to
you
you.
were only
Okay,
looking
that's
for that, right? Like, just, is there somebody else
right.
interested? Are
Yeah.
you still interested, Barbie, in doing it?
Yeah. But I was gonna say I'd be fine coming off, but I wouldn't be. I'll be honest.
Let's do it. You and I will do it. Pam, you'll send us your input. If you have some input,
Yeah,
you look at that
definitely.
application and you feel like,
Sure.
let us know and we'll ask Lori to do the same. Okay? You just let me know when you want to meet.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to.
Okay.
We'll have to plan a date, okay. And then under new business, we just have an updated homeschool list. So, the chair will entertain a motion
I
to.
just have a question about this.
Yeah. That it's getting big?
No,
Probably
no,
gonna
no,
be
no,
open.
no, I don't think it's getting big. There, I only noticed one child's birth date isn't listed. I thought, oh, that's odd. And, you know,
There are a couple though, right?
was it just one? Oh, no, there's two whose birth dates aren't listed, so I thought that was strange.
These aren't.
Well, their ages, that looks to me like that must be their ages as
Yeah,
opposed to
so I
their
wonder
birth
why
dates.
they're,
Yeah, why are their ages?
I don't know, we can ask Donna. You
Yeah.
know, she can fill that in next, cause she keeps giving us an updated list as their. What'd you say, Laura?
There'll be another one at the next meeting.
Okay, so
Another
we'll make sure we fill in those holes
Okay,
for the next one and
okay.
Okay,
add
so I'm
whoever
gonna,
we
but
have to
I'll
add.
approve this one. This
Yeah.
one. Okay, so the chair will entertain a motion to approve the, homeschool list for the 2014-2015 school year, as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. I think we're done. I think that there is no need for an executive session this evening. So the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting at 10:13 PM. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night.
Thank you for watching. Appreciate you.